Chapter 29:48. The sword of Avicii in Yi Shiwen's hand was even more dazzling than when it was in the hands of the Demon King. This was its true master. After entering the Emperor realm, Yi Shiwen could truly control the sword of Avicii. Compared to the previous master of the sword of Avicii, Hell Master Avicii, he was not inferior. But even so, Yi Shiwen could not completely merge with the sword of Avicii. After all, it was not a life Dao tool. After this battle, he still had to refine his own life Dao tool. For an Emperor realm, it was no different than a second life. No one could ignore it. Yi Shiwen's body was dazzling with all kinds of law Dao marks flying around. As an Emperor realm, his words were the law. Even if he did not deliberately, the law in the sky would be used by him. At this moment, Yi Shiwen became extremely dangerous. The power of his attack did not look like someone who had just ascended. It was as if he was a top Emperor realm who had been ascending for many years. The powerful power caused the starry sky to explode in an instant. It blasted towards DNI. Bang! This attack was intercepted by DNI. Yi Shiwen, is this all you've got? It's not enough. Don't underestimate me, DNI said coldly. Although Yi Shiwen's method was a little tricky, he was indeed a genuine Emperor Lord in the end. Yi Shiwen had underestimated himself too much. A huge domain was formed around his body. In this domain, he was the real ruler of the world. No one could compete with him in this domain. This domain instantly shrouded Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a terrifying power surrounding his body. It was as if a bloody mouth was opened and it was going to swallow him. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. How could a true emperor fall just because of an attack just now? There was no fluctuation in his heart. He spread his arms and a dazzling light burst out. Wisps of golden divine light flowed out of his body, elevating his great path. DNI was an Emperor Realm Emperor. He was also an Emperor Realm Emperor. Who would be afraid of who? Yi Shiwen took a step forward and directly rushed into DNI's domain. His fists were invincible. His fists crushed everything. Just one punch tore the domain apart. Boom! The entire domain was trembling violently, but it was still trying its best to hold on. However, Yi Shiwen's offensive was still constantly increasing. His whole body's magic power was burning, as if it had reached the limit. He directly punched with both of his fists, and the domain was smashed into pieces. Everyone held their breaths and focused their attention. This was a battle between two sovereign monarchs who had truly survived. Furthermore, they had both become sovereign monarchs not too long ago. Originally, they should be able to appreciate each other, but now, they were engaged in a life-and-death battle. DNI's domain was very powerful, but Yi Shiwen was even more powerful. He destroyed everything with just a pair of fists, striking out with an invincible aura. The grand spectacle of the two of them exchanging blows left everyone dumbfounded. After countless years, there was finally a battle of this level. Your strength is only at this level? Yi Shiwen slightly sneered. This domain is not bad, but it can't trap me. DNI squinted at Yi Shiwen and said, You will regret this. Regret? I've never regretted anything. Yi Shiwen's body bloomed with a shocking murderous intent. He did not hide it, and there was no need. The position of the two of them was naturally an enemy. If you have any moves, use them as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't have the chance. Since you can become sovereign monarch, the Tao you created must be extraordinary. If you don't enjoy it in this world and disappear forever, I also feel pity for you. Emperor Yi is looking down on DNI. Everyone had subconsciously changed the way they addressed Yi Shiwen, Emperor Yi. Because these years, he did not have any famous name, so he did not have any titles. He was only known by his surname, just like Emperor Qin. However, this was enough. He did not need any titles. His name represented a kind of extreme power and terror. Arrogant. We are both sovereign monarchs, and we both became emperors. Yi Shiwen became emperor for a shorter time. How dare he say this? The heavenly clan was naturally furious. They thought that Yi Shiwen was underestimating them. You don't need to worry. My Tao will naturally be passed down forever. As for you, I can't see your future. DNI said, not to be outdone. Above his head, the myriad worlds diagram rotated, constantly bursting with bursts of treasure light. It turned into an endless world, containing extremely terrifying great Tao laws. It was completely different from what Yi Shiwen had seen before. This was the true power of a Tao tool. It could attack and defend at the same time. It could not only be used for defense. Suppress him for me. Emperor Ni roared, and the myriad worlds diagram flew out instantly, pressing down on Yi Shiwen. As it flew, it became more and more terrifying every minute and second. It seemed to be absorbing the power of the myriad worlds diagram, expanding and becoming more terrifying. He is absorbing the power of the myriad worlds diagram. The truly terrifying side of the myriad worlds diagram is finally revealed. He can borrow the power of the myriad worlds diagram. This is the method and power of the emperor level. It is not something we can compare with, many people exclaimed. Many quasi-emperors were in despair in the face of this power. It was not something they could compare with at all. The old antiques who had witnessed the invincibility of the emperor in all directions were fine. The quasi-emperors who had achieved Tao in recent years were even more desperate. Even though they knew how terrifying the emperor was, they had never seen it for themselves. They were more or less hopeful. In fact, they were not that far away from the emperor. Only now did they understand that it was not just not far away. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. They were not on the same level at all. Even if DNI had borrowed the opportunity of becoming an emperor, people would think that he had cheated, and his strength would inevitably be greatly reduced. Even so, it was enough to make them despair. They could not imagine how strong Yi Shiwen, who had forcefully broken the shackles and become an emperor, would be. Feel the anger of the myriad worlds diagram. DNI roared. The light of the myriad worlds diagram bloomed in his hands. You want to use the power of the myriad worlds diagram to suppress me? You are thinking too much. Yi Shiwen sneered. Kill until you don't dare to call yourself the emperor. Yi Shiwen punched out. The 6 paths of reincarnation instantly formed. A huge will slowly rotated behind him. The power of the 6 paths was incomparably majestic. The power of reincarnation in the entire universe was used by him in an instant. Yi Shiwen spread his arms and punched out continuously. The worlds that fell from the myriad worlds diagram, as well as the sun, moon, and stars, could not do anything to Yi Shiwen. They were all destroyed by him. Yi Shiwen's body shuttled back and forth in these transformed worlds. One world after another exploded on the spot wherever he went. He was like a terrifying devil king who could destroy the world. No world could survive under his feet. All of them exploded into pieces. Countless worlds exploded. Even a portion of the world's will was extremely terrifying. It was like a raging wave sweeping in all directions. Yi Shiwen kept shuttling through these worlds. He destroyed everything along the way and rushed towards DNI. Facing Yi Shiwen, DNI's expression was cold. The myriad worlds diagram above his head was also bursting with powerful light, protecting him. Whoosh! The tiny sword in his hand suddenly shot out. The brilliant rays of light formed a shocking sword energy in the sky. This sword light swept across, penetrated the stars, penetrated the world, and firmly locked onto Yi Shiwen, who was shuttling back and forth in the world of stars. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly, and the time robe on his body erupted with brilliant rays of light. The dark Bodhi divine hand was emitting the light of the Tao. He hadn't awakened the power within his body for countless years. Now, his power had finally been restored under Yi Shiwen's usage. Bang! When the sword aura slashed towards Yi Shiwen, it was instantly knocked away by him. Rumble! The sword aura that was knocked away by Yi Shiwen deviating from its original trajectory, pierced through billions of stars and destroyed a galaxy, destroying countless lives. The Teia sword was too terrifying. Many immortal legacies were scared silly. They subconsciously wanted to escape, but they suddenly remembered where they could escape to. They suddenly realized that the myriad worlds was big, but it was actually very small. It was big because it was too wide for them. Even ordinary gods might not be able to travel through it in countless years. However, for a battle between emperors, the entire universe would be included in the battlefield. They said they wanted to escape, but where could they escape to? If they were not careful, such a sword aura would be enough to completely wipe out their immortal legacies. Under such circumstances, they said they wanted to escape, but in reality, where could they escape to? In a battle between emperors, there was no difference at all. They could only pray that their luck would not be so bad that they would be directly swept away by the emperor's attack. Yi Shiwen also realized this problem. It was just an attack that he had casually knocked away. If it was a quasi-emperor, such an attack would at most sweep away some stars, and then automatically dissipate in the universe. But it was different for emperors. The power of this attack was more than 100 times stronger. If the battlefield was in the Secret Alliance, this attack would be enough to completely wipe them out. At this time, he finally understood why the heavens and earth restricted the appearance of emperor-level experts. It would be terrible if a few more came. A battle would tear the heavens and earth to pieces. Therefore, when ancient emperors fought, they would set up emperor-level formations. All problems would be solved inside. Once the scope was exceeded, the heavens and earth would be in a mess. Even if they won, the heavens and earth would be punished. The heavens would be angry and let the emperors know who was the boss. Because the heavens were the convergence of the will of all living things. Although the emperors were so unscrupulous, the heavenly Tao would represent them to destroy those emperors who did whatever they wanted. Yi Shiwen's thoughts flashed by, and he had already rushed in front of Emperor Enai. In an instant, the battle became violent again. Chapter 2949. Yi Shiwen completely exploded and rushed to the front of DNI. DNI, you are going to die today. Do you think I am the same as you? I will let you understand now. What is the difference between me becoming an emperor and you becoming an emperor through trickery? Yi Shiwen felt that the rules between heaven and earth had become much stronger. The way of heaven was strengthening this space, so that the situation where he could shatter a galaxy with one sword would not happen again. He was relieved and could attack with all his strength. Previously, he had been very careful and did not dare to attack with all his strength. Now, he had no such scruples. Yi Shiwen had gone berserk, and the magic power within his body was boiling. It surged like a monstrous wave, and erupted amidst the endless golden light. In the blink of an eye, he blasted out millions of attacks. His speed was his strong point, and after becoming an emperor, his speed was greatly enhanced. He was so fast that those quasi-emperors were unable to capture all of his movement. They had to open their heavenly eyes to barely capture some of his movement. However, these movements were done many times before, and they could only do so much. Bang! Yi Shiwen's attack finally hit Dini's chest. Dni let out a muffled groan as he was sent flying. When he was at his peak, when he was most proud, Yi Shiwen seized the opportunity and hit him in the chest, sending him flying. All of this happened so quickly that many people didn't even have time to react before it happened. Dni was blown away. He flew across a galaxy and smashed into a horizontal star. The fiery horizontal star was smashed on the spot. The power of countless nuclear explosions inside exploded. Puff! Dni spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes changed. Everything happened so fast that he did not even have time to react. At the same time, Yi Shiwen's punch was too strong. In an instant, the attack actually broke through the protection of the myriad worlds diagram and blasted into his chest. It was really incredible. In the distance, Yi Shiwen was surrounded by countless rules. They turned into the 5 guardians of heaven and earth: the white tiger in the north, the azure dragon in the east, the vermilion bird in the south, the black tortoise in the west, and the qilin in the center. At this moment, the 5 mythological beasts in the ancient myths and legends, who were responsible for guarding the world and maintaining the integrity of the world, had actually manifested. They had frozen the space around Yi Shiwen's body in order to prevent his power from tearing the world apart. Yi Shiwen stood in the center of these 5 mythological beasts. He looked like the reincarnation of an ancient celestial emperor. He appeared incomparably majestic under the contrast of these 5 mythological beasts. One couldn't look directly at him. Emperor Yi is invincible! Throughout the myriad realms, many people cried out in shock and worshipped him. Yi Shiwen's strength had reached an unimaginable level at this moment. Everything had erupted. It was even to the extent that even the inheritances of the imperial monarchs were shocked. Because even though their ancestors had records of battles between imperial monarchs, it hadn't been as shocking as witnessing it with their own eyes. This simply toppled their worldview. He had just advanced to martial emperor, and he was already unrivaled. However, at this time, when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was still there, his figure suddenly shattered in the air. Afterimage, it's an afterimage. Only then did everyone realize that what they saw was Yi Shiwen's afterimage from who knew how long ago. Where was his original body? Many people looked towards DNI, but they didn't know when Yi Shiwen had already appeared in front of DNI. He had directly traveled through space. Originally, the space around DNI had been locked by the Myriad Realms diagram, and no one was allowed to travel through space to him. But now Yi Shiwen had directly torn apart the space lock with his hands. His whole body was shining with golden light, like a golden man, and he instantly entered DNI's defense circle. All of this happened too quickly, especially the unexpected attack. It broke through DNI's space defense in an instant. DNI didn't expect this at all, so he wasn't prepared at all. Yi Shiwen's attack had already arrived, directly blasting into DNI's body. It was simply a fatal blow. Puff! Yi Shiwen's fist pierced through DNI's body. Blood splattered in all directions like a waterfall, and bone fragments flew everywhere. His spirit also seemed to have been contaminated with combustible substances, burning fiercely. Everyone was stunned. When they looked over, the battle had already progressed to this point. Yi Shiwen's speed was faster than their reactions. DNI was actually injured. Although there had always been rumors of emperors being seriously injured or even killed, everyone knew that the physical bodies of emperors were extremely terrifying. They could easily survive in the most dangerous places in the world, not to mention occasionally seeing an emperor injured with their own eyes. This attack was too terrifying. If it were an ordinary quasi-emperor, he would have been killed in an instant. Is DNI dead? Someone said in a trembling voice. But soon, they didn't have to see for themselves because Yi Shiwen moved again. In just an instant, he held the Avicii sword in his hand and chopped down. It was like an ancient mountain had been chopped down. As he raised his hand, the wind and clouds between heaven and earth changed, and the color of the universe changed. The devil's wings behind Yi Shiwen opened and flashed gently. Just when everyone was feeling strange, they saw DNI in front of Yi Shiwen being torn apart by the astral wind caused by Yi Shiwen's devil's wings. Only then did everyone realize that it was also an afterimage. DNI's real body had already escaped far away. DNI's figure stopped thousands of miles away, and he kept panting. The attack just now was too terrifying. Even the Myriad Worlds diagram couldn't defend against it. Yi Shiwen was simply too fierce. Even the Tao instruments were useless in front of him. But before he could catch his breath a little, he saw that Yi Shiwen had actually rushed over to him without him noticing. Yi Shiwen had already gone crazy. The Avicii sword turned into a bloody hell, enveloping DNI and swallowing him completely. Kill, kill, kill! Yi Shiwen's series of attacks came one after another. It seemed that he didn't give Dni a chance to recover at all, and directly strangled him to death. Puff! Dini's body was slashed by the sword on the spot. Due to the protection of the Myriad Worlds diagram and the strength of his emperor's body, he wasn't cut in half on the spot. But the violent power still caused dense cracks to appear on his body, and he was almost cut into pieces in the void. A series of heavy injuries made people feel breathless. It was as if someone was holding their necks tightly. They couldn't bear to blink at all. Otherwise, they would miss the most exciting battle in a breath's time. In today's world, the most terrifying collision between emperors. Although Dni had the emperor's body and the protection of the Myriad Worlds diagram, his body was still broken, and blood was spurting out like a waterfall. Yi Shiwen's various attacks were still falling at an astonishing speed, and they constantly fell on Dini's body, wanting to smash his body into pieces. Only another emperor could injure an emperor to this extent. This was an unchanging truth. Yi Shiwen kept attacking, and Dni kept running. Dini's movement speed was very fast, but Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster, and he kept chasing. The Avicii sword in his hand was extremely fast, and its power was also extremely strong. The continuous attacks even made Dini's Teia sword unable to attack. In such a situation where he was being beaten passively, a purely offensive Dao tool like the Teia sword was too useless. But it had to be said that the emperor's body was extremely strong, and it was very difficult to kill an emperor throughout the ages. This was not without reason. Even so, Dni was still not beaten to death. He spurted out a mouthful of blood, which turned into an amazing power, and forcibly brought him out of Yi Shiwen's attack range. Huff huff! Dini's heavy breathing could be heard throughout the universe. His breathing was one with the Great Way, and his breathing was the breathing of the Great Way. It was a kind of manifestation of the Great Way. He stood in the universe with blood all over his body. The series of storm-like attacks just now had really beaten him up, and he was almost beaten to death. If he had not used a secret technique at the last and most crucial moment, he might have really died in Yi Shiwen's hands. His expression was cold, and he was not angry, and he did not roar, because he knew very well what kind of terrifying existence he was facing. Yi Shiwen was the most terrifying opponent he had encountered after he had become an emperor. He had never thought that someone could force him to this extent. It was reasonable to say that no one in this world could do this. However, Yi Shiwen, who had also just become an emperor, had accomplished such a thing. How could he not feel palpitations in his heart? At this time, with Dini's heavy breathing, everyone felt like their necks were finally being released. Although no one was strangling their necks, they had this feeling, and now they had a chance to breathe. In the myriad of worlds, everyone was shocked. The scene just now was too terrifying. A sovereign monarch was suppressing another sovereign monarch, beating him up all the way, almost beating him to death, crushing his primordial spirit, causing him to never be able to reincarnate. This result was too frightening. They were so nervous just now, so they did not think too much about it, but now the more they thought about it, the more frightening it was. It was just like a nightmare. Even the antiques who inherited the emperor's inheritance might not have been able to see such a soul-stirring battle. It was rare in the ancient times. Perhaps no one would have thought that Yi Shiwen, who had also just become an emperor, would fight like this. Dni was beaten to a point where he could not fight back. Just a little more, and I almost killed an imperial monarch. How terrifying! I almost succeeded. I just felt as if I was being strangled. I almost couldn't catch my breath and suffocated to death. Seeing that Dni had escaped, Yi Shiwen didn't chase after him. He just said coldly, "Dni, you and I have been fighting for so many years. It's time to end it. If you don't have any other means, I will destroy your legend today." Chapter 2950. Everyone was shocked. They were a little dumbfounded as they looked at this scene. They stared at Yi Shiwen. It seemed that they couldn't understand why he had suddenly become so violent. Compared to before, there was a fundamental difference in his playstyle. I really underestimated you, Yi Shiwen. I didn't expect you to have such strength when you just became an emperor. Unfortunately, you are still a little bit weaker. You still couldn't kill me in the end. DNI looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, "It doesn't matter. I just didn't kill you this time. There will be many opportunities later. After all, this is just the beginning," Yi Shiwen said calmly. He didn't seem to be troubled by the fact that he didn't seize the opportunity this time. In just a moment, the injuries on Dini's body were almost healed. The recovery ability of a true emperor's body was really amazing. Under the circumstance that Yi Shiwen wasn't chasing after him, he had almost recovered in a short period of time. Although, he must have used the power of origin. However, considering the injuries he had sustained just now, it was already very shocking. DNI flipped his palm and a golden elixir appeared. He looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "I didn't plan to use this golden elixir. This is the golden elixir left by Alchemy Emperor. I didn't expect that I would have to use it soon after becoming an emperor. Life is really unpredictable." Dini's expression was extremely calm. However, in this calmness, there was unparalleled indifference. The indifference was terrifying. He swallowed it and carefully glanced at Yi Shiwen. However, he saw that Yi Shiwen didn't intend to take the opportunity to attack him. His heart unexpectedly gave birth to a bit of anger amidst the deathly stillness. He understood the meaning of Yi Shiwen's expression. Yi Shiwen didn't put him in his eyes at all. Yi Shiwen thought that even if DNI tried his best, he could still kill DNI. This was an invincible confidence. However, it was a shame for DNI. No matter what, he was an emperor. How could he not be angry when he was looked down upon? After swallowing the golden elixir, DNI's aura recovered even faster. His aura was even getting stronger. Even though it was only a temporary increase, the magnitude still surprised many people. Many people didn't dare to say it on the surface. However, they couldn't help but think that Yi Shiwen was being too arrogant. One must know that his opponent wasn't a quasi-emperor. Instead, it was another emperor. Yi Shiwen had become an emperor earlier than Yi Shiwen, even if he had resorted to trickery. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. However, he was very intelligent. So, he naturally knew that many people were saying that he was too arrogant at this time. But no one knew what he was thinking. DNI needed time to recover, and he also needed time to consolidate his cultivation. It might be enough to deal with DNI, but it wasn't enough to deal with Ming Di. Although he didn't know what Ming Di would do in the end, he had to be prepared for the worst. Without a doubt, the worst-case scenario was DNI and Ming Di joining forces. He had to be prepared to fight both of them at the same time. If it really came to that, his inability to consolidate his cultivation might become his fatal weakness. No one had thought of this, or rather, it was not as far away as Yi Shiwen thought. His vision had already moved away from the battle in front of him and was thinking further into the future. He was determined to win this battle. He had spent a lot of effort to set up this trap just to lure the NID out. If the NID escaped, then all his efforts would be in vain. He couldn't bear the consequences of that. It wouldn't be so easy to lure DNI out again. The heavens and myriad realms would be gone by then. Yi Shiwen, I don't know where your confidence comes from. However, I will use the facts to tell you that your confidence is wrong. Very wrong, DNI said coldly. I have never used such a move before. However, you have forced me to this point. You must die. Although I became an emperor with the help of an emperor's opportunity, I will tell you that I am definitely worthy of such an achievement. DNI was sick of everyone's endless guesses. Although no one dared to say anything in front of him, the rumors about him using tricks had been circulating in the various worlds. This annoyed him to no end, and his heart was filled with disgust. Whoosh! D&I rushed directly in front of Yi Shiwen. His speed was extremely fast. Thousands of auspicious signs appeared under his feet and pulled out thousands of purple clouds. In an instant, he surpassed time and space and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was just a simple punch, yet the entire world seemed to be wailing in pain. Miserable cries rang out again and again, unable to withstand such power at all. Bang! This attack directly hit Yi Shiwen's time robe and was blocked by thousands of time power. However, when Yi Shiwen wanted to fight back, D&I had already disappeared. D&I disappeared. Where did he go? Many people exclaimed. They couldn't keep up with D&I's sudden disappearance. So fast. Is this D&I's trump card? Yi Shiwen's expression became a little solemn. Although the attack was blocked by the time robe, he still felt the vibration. This showed that Emperor Ni's attack was indeed tyrannical. Whoosh! Emperor Ni, who had disappeared, suddenly reappeared. He rushed in front of Yi Shiwen and threw the same punch. The heavens and the earth roared. His fist was like a huge beast that swallowed everything. Insignificant skill. Yi Shiwen displayed all kinds of secret techniques at the same time. His hands tore out endless golden light and tore the beast apart on the spot. However, D&I disappeared again. Is this the law of space? No, I didn't feel any fluctuations in space. Yi Shiwen immediately denied his speculation. With his current understanding of the law of space, it was impossible for anyone to use the secret technique of space in front of him, even if the opponent was also an emperor. He was confident. In that case, this is pure speed. Yi Shiwen's speed was also very fast. Naturally, he knew some signs of fast speed. However, he didn't expect D&I to have such a technique. It was faster than the speed of space transmission. He was caught unprepared. As expected, those who could become emperors were not simple. They could pose a threat to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, you must not have expected this either. This is my hidden trump card. No one has ever made me use it because I can only use it once. In the field of speed, no one can compete with me. Even you, who are also an emperor, are not qualified. The Tai-E sword suddenly appeared above Yi Shiwen's head as soon as D&I's voice fell. It almost killed him. Bang! This attack was blocked by Yi Shiwen's dark Bodhi divine hand. The huge power caused a violent tremor in the myriad world. Countless shock waves spread out. Yi Shiwen was as motionless as a mountain, but he had already figured out what was going on in his heart. He was afraid that it was related to that medicinal pill. Without the efficacy of that medicinal pill, he wouldn't have been able to have such martial power to support such an operation. Moreover, he also had a secret technique that could only be used a limited number of times. However, it was hard to say whether it could only be used once like what NID had said. Who knew if what he said was true or false? It had to be said that Yi Shiwen's thinking was very terrifying. In just a short period of time, he had thought of so many things. That was why he couldn't easily show his trump card to others, especially for existences at their level. Once a trump card was used, it would be easy for others to find clues. Even if they couldn't really understand the principle, they could guess some signs. At that time, it would not be so useful. Bang! 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 D&I kept attacking and bombarding Yi Shiwen's defense. The speed of both sides had soared to the extreme. No one could see D&I's trajectory at all. Everyone could only judge by Yi Shiwen's attacks. Yi Shiwen's speed was also very fast. The demon wings were used to the extreme. His body didn't move, but the speed of his attacks was used to the extreme. It was extremely terrifying. Although D&I's speed was very fast, he kept blocking. Occasionally, he missed some attacks, but it was difficult to break the defense of the time robe. Emperor Ni's extreme speed even formed a huge whirlwind in the universe, and the center of the whirlwind was Yi Shiwen. Those below the quasi-emperor level couldn't see what was happening inside at all. They could only see his figure constantly flashing, and occasionally see some fragments. The time robe is really good. It suits me the best. Dini's mocking voice reached Yi Shiwen's ears. Obviously, he was very proud. He could finally hold his head high. The resentment that Yi Shiwen had been suppressing for a long time was finally released. In this process, Yi Shiwen could only keep being beaten. He couldn't turn passivity into initiative. He was so happy. There was nothing to be happy about defeating an ant. However, if he could defeat Yi Shiwen, who was also an emperor, it would be a great sense of achievement. You underestimated me. If you are still alive, come and get the time robe. Yi Shiwen's expression was extremely calm. It was as if he wasn't the one constantly being attacked. He wasn't moved by Dini's words at all. He broke Dini's attack with a wave of his hand, which contained the law of the Great Way. No, you are buying time. After a long time, Dini finally realized something was wrong. Then, a hideous expression appeared on his face. If you think you can exhaust me to death, then you are very wrong. I have this gold core as my foundation. I am afraid that even if you are exhausted to death, I will not be exhausted to death. You are partially right, but not completely right. Chapter 29:51. You guessed part of it, but not all of it. Yi Shiwen's cold voice came. I am indeed stalling for time, but I am definitely not trying to exhaust you to death. Because I don't need it. Yi Shiwen shouted and attacked amidst the endless hurricane. The sword radiance of the Avicii sword split everything apart. The hurricane that was originally around Yi Shiwen stopped and was forcibly suppressed. A sword aura shot up into the sky, 100,000 miles away. The hurricane that NID had created instantly collapsed, rushing in all directions. Many stars trembled violently and exploded in an instant. Yi Shiwen's sword directly slashed NID, who was moving eternally. NID's speed was so fast that he couldn't even react. Yi Shiwen's speed was also very fast. He could capture the trajectory of NID's speed in the endless storm. Dni staggered and fell out. There was a bit of surprise in his eyes. It seemed that he did not expect Yi Shiwen to be able to strike him out with one sword. This sword directly struck the Myriad Worlds diagram and broke the defense of the Myriad Worlds diagram. The remaining sword radiance blasted Dini's body. Dni kept retreating. Even with the protection of the Myriad Worlds diagram, he still could not stabilize himself and was almost blown away. This is impossible. His figure disappeared again and formed a chaotic storm between heaven and earth. Instantly, a fierce battle broke out again. Fierce battles once again spread throughout the entire universe. Bang! 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 Fierce battles and fierce collisions. Every time these two Emperor-level experts collided, heaven and earth would shake violently and the stars would collapse. At this point in the fierce battle, both sides were completely burning up. All the secret techniques were used as if they were free. Dni was originally from the Emperor's inheritance. It could be said that his inheritance had been passed down for a long time. In addition, several emperors of the Sky Clan were generous in teaching him. In order to make him stronger and eventually become an emperor, they taught him many secret techniques. Although Yi Shiwen had come from an unorthodox background, he had actually learned a lot of secret techniques because of various fortuitous encounters. In this way, when the two of them fought, all kinds of secret techniques emerged one after another. The entire universe became a sea of laws and secret technique. Countless laws and paths that were rarely seen were manifested at this moment. As the two of them fought, they were like surging waves that spread in all directions. Bang! Everyone heard another deafening explosion that spread throughout the universe. Dni was sent flying out of the purple storm. Yi Shiwen immediately rushed out. His entire body was surrounded by tens of thousands of technique. Countless runes densely covered his body and transformed into layers of strange phenomena. He was like a mighty celestial emperor. You're delaying for time to consolidate your cultivation, Dni roared. How dare you? At this time, DNI finally knew what Yi Shiwen was planning. Yi Shiwen was indeed stalling for time, but he did not want to exhaust him to death. Instead, he wanted to consolidate his cultivation. At this time, the horror of Yi Shiwen breaking the shackles and becoming an emperor finally manifested completely. Even after taking the golden pill, the inverse emperor still had a feeling of fear. Yi Shiwen rushed forward, his hands tearing apart the defense of the space. The defense of the myriad worlds diagram couldn't withstand his attacks at all. I'll fight you to the death. DNI was shocked, but he had no other choice. He could only rush forward and fight with Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 Under Yi Shiwen's attack, DNI was no match for him at all. He retreated step by step in Yi Shiwen's hands. All kinds of laws intertwined, and blazing lights danced. These attacks directly shattered the defense boundary of the myriad worlds diagram. It had no time to reorganize itself, and Yi Shiwen punched it. Bang! Yi Shiwen punched directly into DNI's body. DNI's chest exploded on the spot, and countless amounts of blood splattered out. At this time, Yi Shiwen looked extremely cruel and powerful. He opened his mouth and took a deep breath. Countless spiritual energy flew up from all over the universe, forming a violent storm. Then, it integrated into Yi Shiwen's body, like a torrent, to replenish Yi Shiwen's consumption. In the myriad worlds, countless people were shocked. Yi Shiwen had absorbed countless cosmic essences in one breath. If several emperors were to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth at the same time, it would be a disaster. DNI fled frantically. He kept retreating, trying to avoid Yi Shiwen's attack range. Go to hell! DNI kept roaring. He suddenly went crazy, no longer having the calmness and tranquility he had at the beginning. Obviously, he had been forced into a dead end. His whole body was shining, dazzling, and he suddenly attacked Yi Shiwen. Every single one of these attacks was like a dazzling waterfall that was invincible. However, Yi Shiwen was obviously more powerful. None of these attacks could even make him frown. He directly tore these attacks apart. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Sky flipping seal. Sword of domination. Many secret techniques flew out of Yi Shiwen's body. At this moment, Yi Shiwen seemed to have turned into the 1,000-armed Guanyin. Each of his hands was releasing supreme martial arts, directly smashing the heaven and earth, and directly returning to the chaotic era. Even DNI was unable to resist such an attack. He was drowned by Yi Shiwen's attacks and murderous intentions. Although the myriad worlds diagram tried to protect him, his defense was eventually breached. All the power was exerted on him, and he was seriously injured again. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to be increasing at every moment. The more he fought, the braver he became. Even when facing DNI, who had taken the golden elixir and his combat power increased greatly, he was not at a disadvantage at all. Gradually, he completely suppressed Yi Shiwen and gained the upper hand. Impossible! This is impossible! DNI's eyes were wide open. He still could not believe it. He was also an emperor. How could there be such a huge difference in their combat power? This itself was completely illogical. It's useless. In front of me, it's useless even if you want to struggle. All of Yi Shiwen's martial arts and magical powers burst out in an instant. Thousands of techniques were used, and they blasted towards DNI. The chaos was trembling. An intense collision was unavoidable. The attack landed on DNI's body and sent him flying again. He was already injured, and now he was even more injured. He was severely injured in an instant. Yi Shiwen was about to pounce on DNI again to get rid of this super threat that he had been worried about for countless years. Suddenly, DNI roared, "Unbounded Voyager!" He turned into a terrifying ball of light, and countless Hong Meng purple gas burst out at this moment. His speed was also pushed to the extreme in an instant. This was what he learned when he discovered that secret technique. It could be used together with his invincible speed, and even an emperor would be smashed into pieces. He was no longer asking for that kind of power. He only wanted to severely injure Yi Shiwen and buy himself enough time. He was gambling. If he won, then it would be fine. But if he lost, he might be killed. At this moment, Yi Shiwen's dark Bodhi divine hand appeared in his hand. He grabbed the Avicii sword in his hand, and suddenly, there was vermilion blood flowing between heaven and earth. It was as if the heavens were bleeding and crying, "Dominate the world. Everything in the world shall be under my control." Yi Shiwen roared and slashed down with his sword. The sword light tore through the space and everything. All of Eneidi's spells and attacks were turned into nothingness by this sword. They were buried in an instant. Boom! After burying all of Eneidi's attacks in an instant, Yi Shiwen held the Avicii sword and rushed towards Neid in one step. Then, he slashed down with his sword. Dni had already felt the danger in this sword. His expression suddenly changed, and he retreated. However, Yi Shiwen did not give him a chance to escape. The Avicii sword became bigger and bigger, and the entire world seemed to be shrouded in this Avicii sword. Everywhere was a bloody hell of the Avicii sword. "I'll kill you!" Dini's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared. The tiny sword in his hand burst with amazing light. He did not care about his injuries, and directly slashed out, showing his real strength as an emperor. However, Yi Shiwen was expressionless. He did not change because of Dini's actions. Boom! The two Dao weapons roared violently in the sky, and eternal light burst out from the collision. The golden sword light of the Tai sword and the bloody sword light of the Avicii sword collided directly. It was like two huge waves colliding, annihilating everything. However, this stalemate only lasted for a moment. The sword light of the Avicii sword crushed Dni in an instant, and the endless light of the Time sword was completely destroyed. Dni only felt his vision go black. The sword light of the Avicii sword cut through the sword light of the Tai sword, and directly smashed the defense of the Myriad Worlds diagram, and fell on his body. Puff! Dini's emperor body was extremely strong, but his entire body was instantly split in half after being hit by this sword. The two halves of the inverse emperor's body exploded. The inverse emperor wanted to break free, but how could Yi Shiwen give him such a chance? The time robe erupted with amazing light, instantly tearing apart the power of time and bombarding the inverse emperor. Bang! Dni screamed, and his body that had not yet recovered was smashed in half by Yi Shiwen's sword again. However, Yi Shiwen's attack was not over yet. He attacked crazily, and in less than a dozen breaths, Dni was dead. His spirit was destroyed, and his body was captured by Yi Shiwen to feed to the Monster Kings. Chapter 2952. This unparalleled battle ended. The world had never been so tragic before. An emperor lord who had just become an emperor died tragically. Blood stained the ground. Yi Shiwen was indifferent. He stood proudly in the sky. His gaze pierced through countless spaces. He seemed to be staring at something. His black hair was scattered on his shoulders. He looked at the world with disdain. This battle was extremely tragic. Yi Shiwen killed an emperor lord with his own hand. He was extremely strong. It left a very deep impression on everyone. He had just become an emperor lord, but he was already so strong. It almost made people see the rebirth of Emperor Qin many years ago. The strength of someone who became an emperor lord during the confinement period was unimaginable. Even if there was a gap between the two emperors, it was not fatal. After all, an emperor lord had many life-saving means. However, Dni was still killed. It was conceivable that the gap between the two sides was not small. They had both just become emperors. Why was there such a big gap? Everyone could only say that one had used a trick and the other did not. Was there such a big gap between becoming an emperor lord through a trick and becoming an emperor lord normally? Originally, the gap between becoming an Emperor Lord normally and becoming an Emperor Lord by chance was not enough for DNI to be killed. However, Yi Shiwen did not become an Emperor normally. He broke through the confinement period and became an Emperor Lord. Since ancient times, apart from him, only Emperor Qin has done it. This is the fundamental reason why DNI was killed in the battle. In the Ark of Heaven, Lucifer sighed. He was not sure whether he was excited or surprised. He never expected such a change. Although he felt that Yi Shiwen might become an emperor, he never thought that Yi Shiwen would become an emperor during the confinement period. He had also reached that step. However, because of this, he knew how difficult it was to take the last step. He did not expect that he finally did it and killed DNI in one battle. He was extremely domineering. He remembered that he said he would go to that place with Yi Shiwen. Now that he thought about it, Yi Shiwen had become an emperor, but his emperor road was still far away. Even if the confinement period was coming to an end, it would disappear sooner or later. He did not know if he had the chance to become an emperor. Unless he really took the last step, no one could be 100% sure. No one in the world can stop him anymore. The human race has another Emperor Lord. I am afraid that in the next countless years, the human race will rule the world. When the Hidden Alliance was established, many people said that they were overestimating themselves. Now, does anyone still think that they are overestimating themselves? Emperor Lord's inheritance. There is another Emperor Lord's inheritance in this world. Many of the old-timers couldn't help but sigh. They didn't know what to feel. The rebellious emperor was killed. From now on, everyone would no longer have to worry about being ruled by the heavenly clan. However, there was no doubt that the human clan would be strong for a long time after Yi Shiwen became an emperor. But it was still better than being a slave to the heavenly clan. However, everyone immediately found something strange. Yi Shiwen's eyes were looking straight into the distance. It seemed as if he was looking through countless layers of space. It seemed as if he was confronting someone. The Taya sword and the myriad worlds diagram tried to escape, but they were caught by the giant hand formed by the principles around him. He wasn't in a hurry to refine them, but rather, he seemed to be confronting something. Could it be Emperor Hades? Many people thought of this possibility. It seemed to be the only explanation. No, that's not the direction of the Netherworld Kingdom, someone said. Although people didn't know much about the Netherworld Kingdom, it didn't mean that they didn't know anything about it. Many Emperor Lords' inheritances had records of the general direction of the Netherworld Kingdom. It's not Emperor Lord Ming? Many people gasped. If it was Emperor Lord Ming, it wouldn't be strange. Emperor Lord Ming had attacked Yi Shiwen before he became an emperor. Adding on the previous grudges, it was normal. But if it wasn't Emperor Lord Ming, it would be terrifying. This meant that there was actually an imperial monarch in this world. That was a big deal. Everyone thought that there were no other Emperor Lords in the world. Even Emperor Lord Ming had been in a deep slumber for hundreds of millions of years. It wasn't surprising that he was still alive. But there were no other Emperor Lords. No one had heard any news about them. Could it be that he hadn't appeared for so many years? Many people felt confused. If it was a sovereign emperor who had been cultivating for many years, then it meant that his strength might be far superior to Yi Shiwen, who had just become a sovereign emperor. Once he took action, it was likely that the new situation that had just been formed in the heavens would change again. Everyone was guessing, but no one had any clue. Why is he like this? Could it be that what Emperor Qin said before was true? Fire Dragon Supreme muttered to himself in the base camp of the Allied forces. He broke out in a cold sweat when he thought of this. His hair stood on end. He remembered something that had been buried deep in his heart. When Emperor Qin had just become an emperor, he had a confrontation with someone. Someone had attacked Emperor Qin from afar, almost killing him before he had even become an emperor. Over a long period of time, the two sides had fought several times. The other side had suddenly attacked, and the Emperor Qin had been prepared to counterattack. At that time, he didn't even understand how they had fought because they had fought from afar. He didn't even know where the battlefield was. He only knew that it was very shocking. Every time they fought, even new martial grandmasters would be affected. But that was a long time ago. After Emperor Qin left, the mastermind had never appeared again. So he had gradually forgotten about it. He even thought that Emperor Qin had already finished off the other party. But now, Yi Shiwen's appearance made him feel as if he had returned to the era when Emperor Qin had just become an emperor. He felt extremely horrified when he came to such a conclusion. What kind of existence was an emperor lord? They were the most powerful group of people in the world. They were not on the same level as peak emperor lords like them. What kind of existence would dare to covet a emperor lord and dare to attack a emperor lord? No matter what, it had to be another emperor lord. Moreover, it should be an extremely powerful existence among the emperor lords. Because he had once unintentionally heard Emperor Qin mention that the main body of the other party was not here. It was just that the other party had attacked him from afar. Even so, it had almost caused Emperor Qin, who had just achieved Tao, to die. How powerful must this person be? This made him suddenly realize that the mastermind might not have left. Or perhaps, although he had never come, he had never stopped spying on the myriad realms. How terrifying was this? Just thinking about it sent chills down one's spine. Yi Shiwen stood tall in the air. His eyes were filled with a bit of coldness. After becoming an emperor, his vision could be said to illuminate thousands of miles. He could see everything in the myriad realms. However, he couldn't see through the layers of void and the figure behind them. He could clearly feel that someone was indeed staring at him. That feeling was very strong. He didn't think that he had sensed wrongly. Before he became a martial emperor, he didn't feel it. It was probably because he wasn't strong enough. But the moment he became a martial emperor, he felt two pairs of eyes staring at him. One of them was very familiar to him. It was Ming Di. The other one was a complete stranger, but it gave him an even more terrifying feeling. In fact, he felt a chill run down his spine the moment he sensed it. This was also the reason why he had to wait until he had completely consolidated his cultivation before dealing with the inverse DD in one go. It was not impossible to kill an ID in the beginning. However, he would have to pay a high price. Not to mention Ming Di, the most terrifying thing was the existence behind him. He had never shown himself, but he was already so oppressed. In the process of fighting with NID, Yi Shiwen clearly felt that the existence wanted to attack several times. It was looking for the fleeting opportunity that Yi Shiwen exposed during the battle. However, Yi Shiwen himself was also a veteran. He instantly sensed it and didn't reveal any flaws. However, he didn't dare to use his full strength to deal with NID. He was multitasking. He reserved some power to deal with the possible surprise attack of Ming Di or that mysterious existence. Yi Shiwen also felt that the probability of that mysterious existence attacking was higher than Ming Di. He even felt that even Ming Di was afraid of that mysterious existence. That was why he didn't attack in the end. Of course, no one knew how much power Ming Di had left. Back then, he was seriously injured. If Yi Shiwen hadn't forced him to wake up early, he would probably still be in a deep sleep. This meant that he hadn't recovered yet. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but frown. Before becoming an emperor, there were many things that he didn't know. He didn't have so many worries. However, after becoming an emperor, he became aware of many things. Only then did he realize that this seemingly chaotic situation was just child's play. With the ability of an emperor, it was only a matter of time to sort out the problems here. However, the real problem was Ming Di and that mysterious existence. No emperor was ordinary. Yi Shiwen had just become an emperor. He naturally understood how terrifying an emperor was. They were more than 100 times stronger than before. This was the most troublesome part. However, he was only a little worried. He quickly suppressed it. This was his territory. He wasn't afraid before becoming an emperor. Now that he was an emperor, why would he be afraid of them? The gaze that had been focused on Yi Shiwen and was ready to attack at any time finally retracted. The best opportunity was gone. Even with his power that was separated by millions of planes, it wasn't enough to defeat Yi Shiwen. Seeing that the opponent had retracted his gaze, Yi Shiwen also retracted his aura. He grabbed the Tai-E sword in front of him. The Tai-E sword was still struggling in his hand. It was the remnant spirit of NID that was causing trouble. Tai-E sword, the Emperor's sword of the human race. It has been covered in dust all these years. Now let me return it to you. Yi Shiwen wiped his hand on the Tai-E sword. Instantly, a brilliant light erupted. Chapter 29:53. The Taya sword shone brightly in Yi Shiwen's hand. The dazzling light could be seen by all the worlds in the universe. Cheerful clanging sounds could be heard. Go back to where you belong. Yi Shiwen released his hand. The Taya sword nodded slightly at Yi Shiwen, as if thanking him for saving it. Then it turned into a ball of golden light and flew towards the Heaven Realm's Ji family. The Taya sword belonged to a great emperor of the Ji family. It had been defeated by the Heaven clan. Now it had finally returned to its rightful owner. Yi Shiwen already had the Avicii sword. So, the Tai-E sword didn't mean anything to him anymore. Moreover, he respected that great emperor who had fought to the death for the human race. So, he didn't intend to take the Tai-E sword as his subordinate. However, Yi Shiwen was not so kind to the Myriad Worlds diagram. He erased its spirit on the spot and took the Myriad Worlds diagram as his subordinate. When the time came, he would be able to use it after refining it completely. The Myriad Worlds diagram contained the great path of an imperial emperor. If he could refine it completely, it would be of great benefit to him. Yi Shiwen stepped on the purple clouds and disappeared after he had subdued the Myriad Worlds diagram. He then returned to the Secret Alliance. The battle finally came to an end. The result of this battle was shocking. From the beginning to the end, Yi Shiwen didn't play his cards according to common sense. No one expected that from the beginning, NID disregarded his identity and personally came to kill Yi Shiwen. Later on, Yi Shiwen had a plan and was able to resist NID while crossing the tribulation. What surprised everyone even more was that not only did Yi Shiwen not fall into a disadvantageous position, but he even succeeded in proving his Tao and killed the rebellious emperor with a single strike. The whole process was full of twists and turns. It was completely unexpected. No one could guess what the result would be until the end. However, after experiencing the initial confusion and shock, the Allied forces suddenly began to cheer because Yi Shiwen had killed DNI. The last backbone of the celestial race had been broken, and there was no possibility for them to rise again. No matter how strong the Heaven clan was, could they compete with a powerful emperor? Not to mention, they weren't idlers either. With all of their forces mobilized, the celestial race's defeat was only a matter of time. This was the final battle, and at that time, the world would be safe for countless years. The allied forces of the various races began to stir. They were only waiting for Yi Shiwen's command. Under his command, they would attack the Heavenly Clan and exterminate them. On the contrary, the Heavenly Clan was completely terrified. Everyone was trembling. Originally, both sides could be regarded as evenly matched. However, after Yi Shiwen beheaded the NID, the balance of victory once again tilted in the direction of the allied forces of various clans. Heavens, could it be that the heavens really don't care about our Tian clan anymore? This is the third time. Are we going to be sealed and exiled for the third time? I can't accept this. We went through all kinds of hardships just to get out of the land of exile. Why are we being chased back now? Everyone was waiting for Yi Shiwen's reply. Yi Shiwen first healed Hua Menghan's injuries. Even though her injuries were quite serious, Yi Shiwen was no longer the same as before. With his skills, it was very easy for him to heal Huamenghan's injuries. After healing Huamenghan's injuries, Yi Shiwen didn't immediately appear to preside over the overall situation. Instead, he went to find the Demon Emperor. Previously, the Demon Emperor had used the last of his spirit to save them several times. He still had to repay this kindness. During this period of time, Yi Shiwen was saving Huamenghan, while the Demon Emperor was teaching Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng. Both of them were considered the future backbone of the Heavenly Court. How far the Heavenly Court could develop in the future depended on the progress of their strength. Whether or not the Heavenly Court could be restored to its former glory depended on whether one of them could prove their Tao and become an emperor. Therefore, he had to carefully teach the two of them. He imparted some secret techniques and experiences that he didn't have time to impart before. Originally, his spirit wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. However, during this period of time, Yi Shiwen continued to use his own skills to prolong his life. Now it was finally time to end. He had taught Yi Wudi and the others everything that he should have. Because of Yi Shiwen's skills, he even remembered more things and imparted things that he thought he didn't have time to impart. In the deepest part of the Hidden Alliance world, Yi Shiwen and the Demon Emperor were drinking tea on a round table on a mountain peak. At this time, no one could sit on the same level as them except for Ming Di. One was old and one was new. Two unprecedented emperors were sitting opposite each other. They didn't discuss Tao. At their level, there was no need to discuss Tao. Since ancient times, only a handful of people could reach this step. They both had an unprecedented understanding of Tao and had reached an extreme. Discussing Tao might be beneficial, but it was definitely not the same as when they were quasi-emperors. It was fine if their opinions were similar. However, if their opinions weren't similar, they would inevitably fight until their heads were broken. They might even have a fight to prove it was normal. Therefore, emperors rarely discussed Tao. Everyone's path was different. There was no need for them to prove their Tao. Their current strength was the best proof. There was no need to say much. They were just talking about some things they had seen. It was like two old friends meeting. Emperor Yi, you've only cultivated for 10,000 years, but you've already proven your status. It's really rare. The Demon Emperor took a sip of immortal tea and looked at Yi Shiwen with a smile. Since ancient times, there's no difference when you've reached this step. It doesn't matter how long or short it is. Advancing bravely and diligently in a short period of time is Tao. Fight and lose, persevere, and finally achieve Tao. Isn't that Tao? Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. He also took a sip of the immortal tea and felt refreshed. This immortal tea didn't belong to him. He had a lot of wealth on ordinary days. However, this kind of thing couldn't be obtained by plundering. It had to be accumulated for countless years, and nurtured by countless generations of wealth and honor. It was also a tribute from the Emperor clan, the Ji family, after he became emperor. Ordinary people could live for thousands of years with just a breath of the fragrance. Even gods could make great progress with just a sip. In this world, except for emperors, no one else could afford such wealth. The people of the world were stupid, and they liked to use the time they took to attain the Tao to judge the strength of an imperial monarch. Of course, it might also be because they had no other methods to judge an imperial monarch. Unless two people actually fought each other, otherwise, how could they judge the strength of an imperial monarch? However, for people like him who had truly reached this step, it didn't matter if he was a step earlier or a step later. He had finally reached this step. What did it matter if he was fast or slow? In the end, he had transcended. The Demon Emperor smiled and said, "The world is unpredictable. It's just like this. I'm about to die, but you, Emperor Yi, are different. One day in the future, you might be able to transcend fate." Transcend fate? Please enlighten me, Demon Emperor. Yi Shiwen said. Emperor Yi is insignificant. It's natural that you don't know these things. The demon emperor said indifferently. If someone else had said this, it would have caused an uproar. Insignificant? Wasn't it just saying that he was born in a bad family? However, at this point, there was no difference whether he was born in a small family or an inborn god. Speaking till here, the demon emperor sighed in his heart. He was different from Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was just an ordinary human. Finally, he had reached this step. It could be said that it was unprecedented. If Emperor Qin didn't stand in front of him, he would be the first human race since ancient times. And he was an inborn god of the demon race. He was born noble. He was born with spirit treasures. Just the starting point was already the end point that countless experts dreamed of. In short, he was a tall, rich, and handsome man. He was born with tens of billions of assets, and Yi Shiwen was a poor loser. He had started from nothing. He had reached this step and was on equal footing with the demon emperor. How could people not sigh with emotion? However, this feeling only lasted for a fleeting moment. At their level, it didn't matter if they had a humble starting point or were born into a noble family, there was no difference. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. He didn't care. In fact, after Emperor Yi consolidated his cultivation, you should have realized that our cultivation base has just crossed another threshold. It may seem impressive, but in reality we will still die. Since ancient times, there have been more than one or two emperors who have fallen. These are all lessons from the mistakes of the past. I believe Emperor Yi must have heard of this. The demon emperor continued. Emperor Yi, you're right. Since ancient times there has been a rumor. If the weak want to truly transcend, not fall into the trap of the heavenly Tao and rule the world, they must seize the good fortune and be truly free. May I ask what good fortune is? Yi Shiwen asked. I don't know what good fortune is. I only know that it is a legend that has existed since ancient times. All the emperors are fighting for this good fortune. At this step, no one doesn't want to seek eternal detachment. No one wants to be under others. If it weren't for the fact that I can't let go of the demon race, perhaps I would have gone to the good fortune world. The demon emperor said. The good fortune world. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly burst with light. He had heard Lucifer mention that world before. However, Lucifer himself didn't know much about it. He only knew that the emperors had gone to that world. As for the specific location, he only knew a little bit from the words of the seniors. Yes, the good fortune world is a world beyond world. It is not in the heavens. There are rumors that it is a world created by the good fortune countless years ago. The true good fortune is hidden in it. If you want to truly transcend, you have to go to the good fortune world. Since ancient times, who knows how many heroes have gone to the good fortune world? The demon emperor sighed slightly. It seemed that he was sighing because he couldn't go to the good fortune world. Just one step to seek detachment. Who would be willing? However, I have never been to the good fortune world. I don't know. Thank you for your guidance, Demon Emperor, Yi Shiwen said with a sincere expression. Chapter 2954. Good Fortune Realm, Good Fortune. Yi Shiwen pursed his lips. What was good fortune? There were some legends about good fortune in the heavens, but they had become common sayings. Good fortune made fools of people, but no one really knew what good fortune was. Even the lofty sovereign emperors like them were the same. No one knew. But all of this is still a long time away. Emperor Yi has such a strong foundation. There are 9 realms of emperor. Emperor Yi has just become an emperor, but you're already at the great perfection of the first realm. It's really shocking, the Demon King said with a smile. 9 realms of emperor? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He felt that he had reached a bottleneck in his cultivation, but there was still a lot of room for improvement. But he didn't know how the 9 realms of Emperor were divided. Yes, the 9 realms of Emperor. My inheritance has this saying, but it seems that those who have truly entered the 9 realms are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. The Demon King said. There were naturally strong and weak Emperors, but Yi Shiwen didn't know this was how it was judged. Emperor Yi has just reached the great perfection of the first realm. It can be said that you've saved at least hundreds of thousands of years. The Demon King said, there are 9 realms of Emperor, and each realm takes more time than the previous one. In this aspect, Emperor Yi doesn't have an advantage. If you want to catch up quickly, you can only swallow the treasures of heaven and earth. Perhaps you can shorten the time. I once swallowed one and directly advanced a realm. Hundreds of thousands of years, for the current Yi Shiwen, was indeed long and unimaginable. One must know that he had only cultivated for 10,000 years, only to be able to practice the first realm to the great perfection realm in 10 times the time. It was clear that the future realms could only rely on grinding. It wouldn't be so easy to advance by leaps and bounds. It would only be possible if there were enough opportunities. But in his heart, he was looking forward to the legendary good fortune realm. It was a miracle to be able to attract so many Emperors. Emperor Yi, after I die, I'll trouble you to look after the heavenly court, the Demon King said to Yi Shiwen. If there was anything that the carefree Demon King couldn't let go of, it was definitely the heavenly court that he had founded. Don't worry, this is my duty. I won't let the heavenly court decline even without the help of the Demon King. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He had already truly reached this step, and understood the thoughts of the monarchs from ancient times until now. Unless the Tian clan had the intention to rule the world, or if there was a great race war, there would be very few battles that would truly exterminate a race. It wasn't just because each sovereign lord's legacy had its own trump card. Even a sovereign lord would have to pay a price to break through the legacy. It wasn't just because the heavens would punish them. Most importantly, there was no need for them to do so. After reaching this level, one's perception would be completely different. The next day, the Demon Emperor passed away silently. It was not like when he became an emperor, everyone under the heavens knew about him. Back then, he was an unrivaled and magnificent figure, yet now, he had vanished without a trace. Yi Shiwen was inexplicably touched in his heart. So what if he was a sovereign emperor? It was hard to predict things in this world without good fortune. After the Demon Emperor passed away, Yi Shiwen walked out of the Hidden Alliance for the first time. For a moment, everyone was watching, especially the Tian clan. They were trembling in fear. Yi Shiwen's emperor's aura had spread throughout the entire Tian clan. Among the monarchs from ancient times until now, he might not be the strongest. However, under such circumstances, no one could stop Yi Shiwen. The only one who could stop him was Ming Di. During the time that Yi Shiwen was in seclusion, the Tian clan kept sending messengers to ask for Ming Di's help. Thinking back to before, the Tian clan was still arrogant. They thought that as long as the other monarchs of the Tian clan crossed the seal, the situation of the entire Tian clan would be clear. At that time, even if Ming Di was a veteran monarch, he could only bow his head in submission under such circumstances. At most, he could only confer territories and protect himself. It was impossible for him to do anything against the Tian clan, which had many monarchs. Unexpectedly, everything changed so quickly. In just a short period of time, the Tian clan, who originally had the upper hand, suddenly fell into a disadvantageous position. They were in imminent danger. With Yi Shiwen as the arrowhead, it was not difficult to destroy the Tian clan. However, Ming Di had always been non-committal about this matter. Obviously, he did not want to provoke Yi Shiwen, who was in the limelight for the Tian clan. At that time, they would fight to the death. The Tian clan would benefit the most. No one would be willing to do such a thing. Ming Di was a scheming person. Of course, he would not be happy. Of course, he was also confident that even if Yi Shiwen became an emperor, he would not dare to fight with another monarch to the peak. In the end, he was completely different from DNI, who had just become an emperor. In his opinion, it was normal for Yi Shiwen to be able to kill DNI. Yi Shiwen was already at the great perfection of the first realm. DNI, who relied on the opportunity to become an emperor, was obviously at the bottom of the first realm. It was normal for DNI to be killed. However, Ming Di was different. A monarch of the first realm could not deal with him. He was not in his peak state yet. He did not want to take the risk. It would not be too late to kill Yi Shiwen when he recovered to his peak state. Moreover, there was still the mysterious mastermind, so he did not dare to act recklessly. As a result, he was unmoved by the Tian clan's continuous requests for help. Even if the Tian clan had promised him great benefits, he was not the slightest bit interested. Moreover, he knew that once the Tian clan released so many monarchs, it would be enough to crush any faction. He was not stupid to let so many powerful opponents in. Just Yi Shiwen alone was troublesome enough, not to mention the others. After Yi Shiwen came out, the first order he issued was not to attack, but to write a letter to the Tian clan's higher-ups, asking them to return to the other side of the seal. The heavens had the virtue of cherishing life. He was not willing to go to the extreme. As long as the Tian clan returned to the other side of the seal, he would not kill them. For a moment, the entire heavens and realms were in an uproar. The Tian clan did not expect Yi Shiwen to spare their lives. The heavens and realms were very shocked. In their opinion, this time, they were taking advantage of the absence of the monarchs of the Tian clan to kill the Tian clan. This way they would be able to eliminate all future troubles. Therefore, when Yi Shiwen was at the Alliance headquarters, experts from all sides sent people to pay their respects. Many old antiques came out of seclusion and advised Yi Shiwen not to be soft-hearted and leave behind this future trouble. Yi Shiwen did not agree to this. So what if he killed all these people? It would only thoroughly enrage the Tian clan's monarchs on the other side of the seal. Moreover, when the Tian clan was defeated in the past, they were not completely wiped out. Was it really because they were not strong enough? More importantly, at their level, things were already different. He said that the heavens had the virtue of cherishing life. He was not looking for a cover for himself, but it was true. The higher one's cultivation was, the more one could sense the existence of the heavenly Tao. The more one could understand what the wrath of the heavenly Tao meant. The Tian clan was suddenly in an uproar. In the face of Yi Shiwen's final ultimatum, the Tian clan was divided into two factions. One faction was naturally frightened by Yi Shiwen. They tried to preserve their vitality and retreat first. In the future, they might have the opportunity to return to the myriad worlds, just like now. There had always been an endless number of emperors in the myriad heavens. However, who could rule the world for an eternity? Yi Shiwen was very strong. So what if he could last for millions of years? It would be a real loss if he were to perish here. However, there was another faction that did not believe that Yi Shiwen had such powerful strength. It was not like countless years ago. There was only one monarch ruling the world. No matter how strong Yi Shiwen was, how could he be compared with countless years ago? He could not really drive them away. They had already established themselves in the myriad worlds, taking root and germinating. For a time, it was hard to determine the winner and loser. In the end, the monarch on the other side of the seal gave an order. Some of the Tian clan who voluntarily returned immediately returned to the other side of the seal. However, those who stayed behind with resources could also stay. Obviously, they wanted to have the best of both worlds. If they could block Yi Shiwen, the others could also return. If they could not, then they would not be completely annihilated. They could still leave a considerable amount of vitality. Knowing the arrangement of the Tian clan, Yi Shiwen did not say much. He just sneered and hesitated. The monarch of the Tian clan had been hiding in the primal chaos for too long. He had long lost his spirit. However, he did not care. The monarch was a different level of life. The remaining Tian clan members were like mantises trying to stop a chariot. It was extremely ridiculous. Facing the Tian clan's hesitant approach, Yi Shiwen issued a strict order to kill the remaining Tian clan members. Not a single one would be spared. Although the heavens had the virtue of cherishing life, he had let these Tian clan members go. If the remaining people were still stubborn, then they would die. For a time, the allied forces of various races and masters gathered. Not only were there famous masters, but there were also many old antique. They responded to Emperor Ye's call to eradicate the last Tian clan. Everyone realized that this would be the final battle. In this final battle, it was necessary to wipe out the Celestials. All of the merit points would be obtained in this final battle. To leave behind an incomparable legend, or not to participate in this great battle. Everyone had a choice in their hearts. Experts from all sides arrived with divine artifacts in hand. Even Dao artifacts were mobilized. Originally, they were worried that they would be ambushed by the Tian clan, so they didn't dare leave the monarch's inheritance. But now, this was the final battle. There was no point in staying behind. Besides, they would definitely win this battle, because they had Emperor Yi to lead them. A new era was about to begin. Chapter 2955. This was the prelude to a new era. It was foreseeable that for a very long time in the future, the world would be under Emperor Ye's rule. Who was a trusted aide, and who was secretly in opposition, would be involved in this battle. No one wanted to be seen as a two-faced rat, outwardly submissive, but inwardly unconvinced. If he was remembered by an imperial monarch, then the consequences were obvious. Everyone was scared silly. Even the ancient legacies that had never appeared in the world sent people. Their so-called never appeared in the world was only relative to the people of the world. In the eyes of an emperor, there were no secrets. Their seclusion was nothing more than a joke. If they didn't come out now, if they didn't exert themselves, the emperor would make life difficult for them in the future. Thus, no one dared to neglect this matter. They sent their strongest forces. As for their base, they didn't need to worry about it. If anyone dared to fight amongst themselves, if anyone dared to drag the army back, that would be politically incorrect. Then they would be annihilated by Emperor Yi. From Emperor Ye's two orders, it was clear that Emperor Yi wasn't a bloodthirsty person, but he wasn't a soft-hearted person either. He wouldn't let those who deserved to die go. This was terrifying. But since ancient times, emperors had always been decisive in killing. This wasn't strange at all. However, with this order, everyone moved out. For a time, experts gathered. There were countless deity-level experts, and over 100 peaked quasi-emperors. There were also more than 10 Dao treasures. The true elites of the 10,000 realms were all gathered here. No one wanted to send people to their death. But if it was just to gain merit, then that was different. In any case, the Celestials had overestimated themselves. They were doomed. Did they really think that the methods they had left behind would work? Yi Shiwen wasn't even needed. If they turned out in full force, it would be enough to completely wipe them out. The army moved majestically, like a black cloud that blotted out the sky. They headed for the celestial camp. Along the way, they encountered strongholds of the Celestials. In the blink of an eye, they encountered a bone that was difficult to chew. The supreme geniuses wielding Dao tools all moved to remove it. They didn't want to waste time. They had been waiting for this battle for too long. It was time to end it. In the universe, there wasn't a single power that dared say that none of their elders had been killed. Their hatred was as deep as the sea. As for the remaining experts of the Tian clan, they were truly enraged. What kind of situation was this? They had always been the ones to take the initiative to attack, but they never thought that the allied army would actually dare to directly attack. No one had expected that Yi Shiwen's appeal and influence would be so terrifying. They might have a chance of winning if it was just Yi Shiwen alone. However, the outcome would be almost one-sided if all the top experts of the myriad heavens and myriad worlds were included. Let's go all out. Even if we die, we have to let them know that the men of the Tian clan would rather die standing than live kneeling. I don't want to go back to that gray world. Even if I die, I want to bite off a piece of their flesh. Emperor Yi is truly awe-inspiring. Even if we can't beat him, we'll make him pay. In the myriad heavens and myriad worlds, many people were surprised that Yi Shiwen was able to summon so many experts with a single piece of paper. This proved that Yi Shiwen was currently ruling over the myriad heavens and myriad world. The battle was about to begin. It was extremely tragic. Blood splattered across the sky. Although the allied army of the various races had the upper hand, the Tian clan that remained were the elites of the elite. They were also the valiant warriors of the Tian clan. They even had the help of the Tian clan's Dao tools. In a moment of desperation, the allied army of the various races were actually unable to break through the Tian clan's camp. In the end, the Dao tools that the various experts brought couldn't help but join the battle. Each of them led aside and directly charged into the formation. However, the Tian clan was already prepared for this. They were already prepared to die. It was obvious that they had all begun to go crazy. They activated the foundation of the camp. For a time, the allied army of the various races suffered great losses. Just as the Tian clan was about to counterattack, Yi Shiwen finally made his move. He destroyed the foundation of the camp with a single strike and killed 10 peak Tian clan quasi-emperors who were in formation. Then, he struck the Tian clan's Dao tools one by one. Although the Dao tools of the Tian clan were extremely terrifying and it was difficult for external forces to injure them, it also depended on what kind of external force it was. Yi Shiwen's strength was clearly one of the best amongst the external forces. As an Emperor Lord, he already had the possibility of severely injuring a Dao tool. Since ancient times, so many damaged Dao tools had been destroyed in the hands of the Emperor Lord without exception. Only the Emperor Lord had such methods. These Dao tools were sent flying, but they did not continue to tangle with Yi Shiwen. It was obvious that they knew that it was useless to stay, so they directly flew through the seal and escaped. Yi Shiwen did not chase after them. There was no need for him to do so. He only continued to attack and kill the absolute experts of the Tian clan. Any one of the powerful quasi-emperors of the Tian clan could stir up a storm. They could be said to be extremely powerful, but in front of Yi Shiwen, they were all meaningless. They were directly slapped to death, and no one was an exception. Not everyone was like Yi Shiwen. To be able to escape from the hands of the Emperor Lord was a kind of honor in itself. From ancient times until now, countless people had recognized this kind of honor. Those who could do it were already outstanding talents that dazzled the ancient and modern times. This battle was extremely tragic, even with Yi Shiwen's participation. The experts of the Tian clan who had already decided to die erupted in the most intense battle, and all kinds of taboo methods were used. They no longer wanted to live, they just wanted to bite off a piece of meat from the allied forces of the various races, and pay a sufficient price. Obviously, they had really done it. Although the allied forces of the various races had defeated the Tian clan's camp and killed all the experts of the Tian clan inside, they had also paid a sufficient price. The casualty rate was more than 30%. Although such a casualty rate was considered extremely good for the opponents they defeated, it still depended on the situation. Under the leadership of Yi Shiwen, a Emperor Lord, they still suffered heavy losses. One could imagine how crazy the remnants of the Tian clan were. Even Yi Shiwen was frowning. When these people were not afraid of death, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, no matter what, in the end, the Tian clan's camp was eradicated. In addition, the truly powerful experts had already been eradicated by Yi Shiwen, so not many of the true quasi-emperor experts of the allied forces of the various races had fallen. Most of them were cannon fodder, and the casualties were heavy. After the Tian clan's camp was eradicated, the experts of the various races began to disperse according to the formation of the legions. They began to hunt down the remaining experts of the Tian clan throughout the 10,000 world. This time, after learning from the previous treatment, the allied forces of the various races did not plan to give the Tian clan another chance to recover. In addition, under Yi Shiwen's leadership, the conditions were unprecedentedly good. If they could not solve this problem, then it would naturally be impossible to truly eradicate the threat of the Tian clan in the future. This time, it was a wake-up call for the allied forces of the various races. They had never paid attention to this problem before, but in the end it had developed into such a situation. This time, it was fortunate that Yi Shiwen had appeared out of nowhere. Otherwise, wouldn't they all have to kneel down? This time, Yi Shiwen had saved the day. Next time, would they still be able to count on such an expert to appear? In order to prevent such a thing, the only way was to eliminate it from the root. Therefore, on this matter, the allied forces of the various races worked together and began to madly hunt down the remnants of the Tian clan. Yi Shiwen didn't stop them. After all, there was no need to do so. Since they had decided to stay, then they would be courting death. Even if they died, they would die a worthy death. Yi Shiwen did not participate in the rest of the pursuit. Firstly, there was no need. There were no strong experts among the remaining Tian clan survivors. It was enough to leave it to the allied forces of the various races. Furthermore, he had an even more urgent matter to do, which was to consolidate the seal left behind by the previous emperors. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and when he reappeared, he was already in the sealed grounds. The bustling scene of the Tian clan in the past had already disappeared without a trace. The Tian clan that wanted to stay had already gone to the Tian clan's camp, and the rest had already fled to the other side of the seal. Thus, the entire sealed grounds had returned to a deathly silence. Yi Shiwen sighed slightly. Many years ago, when he first came to the sealed grounds, who would have thought that he would have the power he had today? The world was as usual, and that was all there was to it. Yi Shiwen sat down cross-legged. Around him, auspicious clouds bloomed, automatically forming a small world. Emperor Yi, your methods are indeed amazing, but flowers will not bloom for 100 days, and people will not be happy for 1,000 days. Every dog has its day. Sooner or later, the Tian clan will rule the world. A cold snort came from the other side of the seal. It was the emperor of the Tian clan. An incomparably powerful aura swept out. If it was in the past, Yi Shiwen would have felt a huge pressure, but now it was just a breeze. No matter how powerful an emperor was, he could not do anything to Yi Shiwen from the seal. There will be a day when the Tian clan will rule the world? Have you not thought about why you failed? Destiny is with me, not with you. Yi Shiwen said with a faint smile. Destiny will change sooner or later. Do you still think that you can control destiny forever? Another emperor of the Tian clan said coldly. He had planned for countless years, but in the end, he had failed at the last moment. This was a huge blow to him. It is said that the will of the heavens is the will of the people, and the will of the heavens is the will of the people. You want to be above the heavens, and make all living beings panic. Everyone hates you as if you are an enemy. Do you think that under such circumstances, destiny will still be with you? Don't you understand such a simple truth? It seems that you have been an emperor for too long and have blinded your eyes. Do you really think that you are omnipotent? Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. The will of the heavens is like a blade. One blade will take your life. You don't need to say any more nonsense. Continue to live there. Don't even think about coming out for billions of years. As Yi Shiwen said this, he formed a seal in his hand and instantly hit the ancient seal that was already full of cracks. Chapter 2956. Yi Shiwen repaired the seal and sat there for 1,000 years. Time flew by, and no one dared to disturb Yi Shiwen. However, the encirclement of the Tian clan in the myriad heavens realm was still ongoing. Although the majority of the Tian clan had been exterminated, there were still some leftovers that had escaped. These were all things that needed to be encircled and annihilated. With this painful lesson, this time, the various powers did not want to leave any leftovers behind. The talent of the Tian clan was too terrifying. Even if it was just an ordinary Tian clan, in reality, they had talent and strength that was not inferior to the elites of the various races. This was a bug-like race filled with geniuses. If not for this, it would have been impossible for them to fight against the entire universe by themselves. Even if a seed was left behind, it would be possible for it to form a huge force after hundreds of millions of years. This time, they had to be exterminated. Other than the remnants of the Tian clan, there were also some races with the bloodline of the Tian clan, as well as the forces that had sided with the Tian clan during the war. They were all encircled and annihilated. Towards such betrayal, the allied forces of the various races hated it very much. This was because these people had acted as the claws of the Tian clan, causing them to suffer heavy losses. Now it was time to pay the price. After 1,000 years of encirclement and annihilation, although it was impossible for the remaining forces of the Tian clan to be completely exterminated, in reality, they had already been strangled to death. In these 1,000 years, it could be said that they had truly entered an era of competition. Without the threat of the Tian clan, the Golden Era had truly erupted. Other than the young supreme beings who had grown up in the early years, there were also some who had grown up in recent years. They were all peak quasi-emperors and ruled over a region. As the greatest enemy of the Tian clan was annihilated, all sides began to stir and compete for the empty space left behind by the Tian clan. Among them, the most powerful one was naturally the Secret Alliance. Because of Yi Shiwen's existence, the entire Secret Alliance had entered a period of rapid development. In a short span of 1,000 years, it had already developed into a colossus, attracting countless experts to come and listen to their orders. Originally, no matter what, even if the Secret Alliance was given a few million years, it would still be impossible for it to develop to such an extent. It was actually able to be compared to the inheritance of the Emperor. All of this was, of course, because of Yi Shiwen. They had been patient with him, which allowed the Hidden Alliance to develop so quickly. Since ancient times, only the Hidden Alliance and the Martial Sect had been able to develop at such a speed. The two major sects had one emperor in the world and had no other competitors. Naturally, no one dared to not give them face. Even if Yi Shiwen did not say anything, they would still have been patient on their own. Fortunately, although the Secret Alliance had just started, Yimo was not a nouveau riche. He had already followed an emperor. Under his control, although the Secret Alliance was developing rapidly, he still controlled it well. He would get what he should get, and he would not touch what he should not get. Even if he did not make the heavens angry, it was still much better than the Martial Sect back then. The situation in the universe had undergone tremendous changes over the past 1,000 years. Yi Shiwen, who was sitting cross-legged in front of the seal, remained motionless. No matter how the wind blew or how the sun shone on him, he remained motionless. "I see." After an unknown period of time, the first voice rang out, like the first word that broke through the chaos. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his eyes. Compared to 1,000 years ago, he had made great progress, mainly in the aspect of array seals. In the past 1,000 years, he mainly repaired this seal, but in the process, he was also constantly understanding these seal technique. This seal had been arranged by the joint efforts of several emperor lords, so it naturally contained great mysteries. It had taken him hundreds of years just to comprehend these things. Yi Shiwen continued to repair the seal in the remaining time. His speed was getting faster and faster. After repairing the seal, Yi Shiwen arranged another array outside, shrouding the sealed land in it. Finally, it was completely banished into the endless void. Other than Yi Shiwen, No one else knew where the sealed grounds was. The existence of this sealed grounds itself was a great threat. Unless the Tian clan was exterminated, it would not be possible. The news of Yi Shiwen's return from the sealed land had shaken the entire myriad heavens. Although everyone was used to the fact that there was an emperor above their heads, Yi Shiwen had been repairing the seal for thousands of years. He had never intervened in the affairs of the myriad heavens. In fact, many people had even forgotten about this matter. Now that Yi Shiwen had returned, many people were shocked. The first thing Yi Shiwen did when he returned was to worship the heavens. Fortunately, the secret alliance was prepared in this aspect. They found many precious divine materials and laid an altar. Countless disciples of the secret alliance attended together, in addition to many experts from various clans and sections. This was an extremely rare opportunity. After all, even though there had been many imperial monarchs since the ancient times until now, when they were evenly distributed throughout the boundless annals of time, there were pitifully few of them. Besides an extremely small number of seniors, everyone else had only heard of imperial monarchs offering sacrifices to the heavens in legends. Now that they were actually able to witness it, how could they not be excited? The sacrificial ceremony was a way for emperors to announce to the heavens, and it was also very beneficial for the people watching. At this moment, the heavens would not be stingy with their rewards. Everyone's cultivation improved, and many people directly broke through the realm barrier that they had not broken through for many years. Yi Shiwen had officially joined the Hidden Alliance after he had presided over the sacrificial ceremony. He had accepted the worship of all parties. This should have been done thousands of years ago. However, it had been delayed because he had to repair the seal. Now everything had been completed. Experts from all sides came to pay their respects. This was the only emperor apart from Emperor Qin in the recent ancient times. This was the respect for the emperor. No matter who the expert was, they must be respectful when facing such an emperor. In particular, Yi Shiwen had just led them to defeat the heavenly race. It could be said that his achievements were so great that it shook the heavens, and his prestige was like the sun in the sky. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen had joined the secret alliance and ruled the world. It had already been 2,000 years. As time passed, the development of the secret alliance had also stopped. It was not that they did not have the ability to continue expanding, but there was no need to. Compared to expanding the scale, consolidating themselves was more important. Moreover, Yi Shiwen also understood the principle of overflowing when the moon is full, and the moon is full when it is empty. In the history, when many emperors established the inheritance of emperors, they did not overdo it and occupy the living space of others. And the ones who did this, like the heavenly race, were exiled 3 times, and provoked public anger. When Yi Shiwen entered the 3rd millennium after becoming an emperor, the secret alliance also officially changed its name and established the Divine Court. It was officially separated from the Hidden Valley in the past, and truly entered the era of Yi Shiwen. And the heavens and the realms finally entered the era of the Divine Court's rule. In these thousands of years, in addition to developing itself, the Divine Court also actively participated in the post-war reconstruction of the heavens and the realms, and was responsible for mediating the conflicts between the major forces to prevent the outbreak of war again. With Yi Shiwen in charge, in addition to the Divine Court's mediation, basically adhered to the principle of fairness, so the major forces were sincerely convinced. And in these 3,000 years, Yi Shiwen did not enter the state of closed-door training like everyone imagined. Instead, he lived with his family in the depths of the Divine Court. Except for patrolling the world every 2 years, he never went out. And in the 3rd millennium, Yi Shiwen finally set off for the Kurfürst Road. Emperor Yi set off, and the sky and the earth shone brightly, and the purple aura came from the east for 30,000 miles. Although he did not bring anyone with him, it still shocked the heavens and the realms. Many people were shocked. What was Yi Shiwen trying to do? The Kurfürst Road, it's the Kurfürst Road? Many people exclaimed. The Kurfürst Road had reappeared. This should not have happened. The last opportunity to become an emperor on the Kurfürst Road was also seized by the inverse emperor. Since then, the Kurfürst Road had completely disappeared from the world, and no one could find the whereabouts of the Kurfürst Road. But with Yi Shiwen's monstrous magic power, the Kurfürst Road reappeared in front of everyone as if the clouds were dispelled and the sun was seen. Is Emperor Yi trying to attack the Kurfürst Road? Many people faintly thought of this. Many years ago, the Qin Emperor seemed to have wanted to do this, but a shocking battle broke out with a terrible existence. In the end, the Qin Emperor, who had never lost a battle in his life, failed to attack the Kurfürst Road in the end, which added a layer of mystery to the Kurfürst Road. Was Emperor Yi trying to attack the Kurfürst Road again? Could the Kurfürst Road that had once stopped the Qin Emperor also stop Emperor Ye's unhindered domination? No one knew why Yi Shiwen wanted to erase the Kurfürst Road. Although there were rumors from various forces that the Kurfürst Road was extraordinary and that there was a great mystery hidden in it, no one could understand it after so many years. Yi Shiwen stood outside the Kurfürst Road and stood still. Looking from afar, it was like an ancient divine mountain standing between heaven and earth. Still not showing yourself? Yi Shiwen's words had thoroughly shocked all the experts of the 10,000 worlds who were paying attention to this place. There was actually someone here? And they didn't know it at all? Just who in the world dared to go against an emperor monarch? Boom! In the Kurfürst Road, a blazing lightning tore through the sky, directly shuttling out of the Kurfürst Road, and a figure landed in the field. As soon as he appeared, the world seemed to fall into a kind of silence, suppressed by a terrible coercion. Emperor, this is the coercion of an emperor! Many people were almost scared silly. Could it be that there was another emperor hidden among them? Many people's rationality told themselves that it was impossible, but the facts in front of them had to admit that it was indeed the coercion of an emperor. Such a feeling could not be wrong. Compared to Yi Shiwen, although the form was different, it was exactly the same in essence. No one could see clearly who that figure was. They could only see that it was a man in a luxurious robe, and in those endless chaotic eyes, there was unimaginable disdain. Chapter 29:57. Many people were scared silly. Where did this guy come from? Everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had become an emperor under the watchful eyes of everyone. Who was this person? He wasn't at a disadvantage under Emperor Ye's pressure, and even seemed to be resisting. Many people thought of the incident that had caused Emperor Qin to return in defeat. Could this be the person who had caused Emperor Qin to return in defeat? If this was the case, then it would become a serious problem for Yi Shiwen to rule the world. In the current era of an emperor, he should have been able to sweep across the world. But with such a person here, Yi Shiwen's ruling power would be greatly reduced. Not to mention, there was also Ming Di, who was watching covetously. It seemed like the world hadn't truly reached peace yet. There was still someone capable of posing a fatal threat to Emperor Ye's rule. This was going to be another emperor-level battle. Yi Shiwen had only become emperor for 3,000 years. Was he going to have 2 emperor-level battles in a row? It seemed like he was destined not to be a peaceful emperor. He would have to fight for his entire life like Emperor Qin. This was a terrifying expert who could cause Emperor Qin to return in defeat. How could such a person not make everyone nervous? If Emperor Yi was defeated, then the world would once again descend into chaos. This mysterious monarch expert, as well as Emperor Hades, who was eyeing them covetously, were no pushovers. Although Yi Shiwen was strong, he was still in a much better position than them. Everyone couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines when they thought of the most terrifying consequences. Yi Shiwen hadn't been an emperor for a long time. So, he hadn't truly established his invincible prestige. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so worried. In fact, they wouldn't even need to think about it. "I'm here," the figure said coldly. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of arrogance in it. Unimaginable arrogance. You want to destroy the Kurfürst Road? The figure asked Yi Shiwen, seeming to be disdainful. He naturally had some self-control. Since ancient times, there had been many who felt that there was something wrong with the Kurfürst Road. But in the end, not a single one had been able to truly destroy it. Emperor Qin was one of the first to act. In the end, he didn't succeed and returned in defeat. Given Emperor Qin's prestige and strength back then, it could be said to be shocking. Countless laws appeared around him, making him seem like the most powerful imperial emperor in the world. That's right, the Kurfürst Road. What a joke. Who is qualified to choose the Kurfürst Road? Yi Shiwen opened his mouth, his voice cold and ruthless. His eyes, which were as deep as the Milky Way, were incomparably blazing. I am qualified, the figure said slowly. You? Yi Shiwen sneered. I have a question that I'm curious about. What happened to those who became emperors by relying on the Kurfürst Road since ancient times? Except for the inverse emperor who was killed by me, there was another one who was killed during the reign of Emperor Qin. What about the rest? Don't you think you're asking too much? Do you really think that you're invincible now that you've become a martial emperor? The figure slowly said. The more you know, the faster you die. Although I am not invincible, but it is enough to suppress you, Yi Shiwen said coldly. In this life, I will rule the world. Just go and be an invincible sovereign emperor. Why are you challenging me? That figure's voice was cold, and he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. If you want to meddle too much, you must pay the price. Some people can't be unjust. This world is too chaotic. You have meddled in the order of the world for so many years, it's time to end it. Yi Shiwen said slowly, you even dare to meddle in the selection of emperors. I think you are the ones who are really arrogant. It seems that it doesn't make sense. Even Emperor Qin is not my opponent, let alone you? The voice said coldly, you, who have just become an emperor, are not qualified to be arrogant in front of me. Emperor Qin is not your opponent? You really know how to flatter yourself. Yi Shiwen said slowly, you have been hiding in the battle back then and didn't come out. I don't know, after being seriously injured, how much power do you have left now? It's enough to kill you, the figure said unmoved. It is indeed an extremely brilliant method, Yi Shiwen suddenly said. With your divine thoughts controlling the emperor's body, you can burst out a combat power not weaker than the emperor level. It is indeed amazing. This emperor's body should be your main means of interfering in this world. Previously, when I was crossing the tribulation, it was also you who spied on me. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be shocked instantly. Someone dared to spy on Yi Shiwen crossing the tribulation. Dared to spy on an emperor crossing the tribulation. Wasn't that courting death? Many people couldn't help but be completely shocked when they thought of this. In particular, the meaning behind Yi Shiwen's words was that the person in front of them turned out to be the emperor's body. There was indeed such a method to control the emperor's body with divine thoughts. Emperor Ni had once controlled the emperor's body, but in terms of combat power, it was only slightly stronger than ordinary Taoist tools. It was impossible to exert the combat power of the emperor's body again. Not to mention, according to Yi Shiwen's words, this person didn't belong to this world at all. He actually came from a distant place with divine thoughts to control the affairs in the myriad world. This could be said to be a secret, a truly shocking secret. Who the hell was this person? You can actually see it. It seems that you really have some ability to become the emperor after Emperor Qin. However, the more capable people are, the faster they die. Don't you understand this truth? The figure said coldly, if you had obediently been an emperor and ruled the world, you would have had your glory and your legend. But now you actually dare to provoke me. You are really courting death. It's really ridiculous. Who is the reckless one? Let's just fight. Although I don't know where you got the Emperor's body, today I will cut off your claws that reached here." Yi Shiwen sneered and instantly attacked. Around his body, the spiritual power instantly surged. His spiritual power was actually engraved with "Ask the Way." These were the direct manifestations of the law of the Great Way. They communicated with heaven and earth, and represented the will of heaven and earth with infinite power. 6 paths, reincarnation fist. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch. In an instant, the galaxy collapsed and heaven and earth wailed, as if the world was about to be destroyed. His expression was very indifferent. Once this punch was launched, it was almost as if he wanted to rebuild the 6 paths of reincarnation between heaven and earth. In terms of strength, compared to thousands of years ago, it was not known how much more tyrannical it was. It made people tremble with fear. Yi Shiwen's punch directly blasted through the universe and dispersed the chaotic mist in front of this figure, revealing the face of a middle-aged man. That handsome face was full of murderous intent. At that critical moment, he also attacked. He blasted out a punch, and the world suddenly changed. He blasted towards Yi Shiwen's figure. Boom! Boom! This blow shook the world, and countless galaxies were destroyed. It was not inferior to the battle between Yi Shiwen and Inverse Emperor. In fact, it was much more terrifying. At that time, when Yi Shiwen destroyed Inverse Emperor, his strength was not comparable to now. In addition, Inverse Emperor's strength was only at the bottom of the first realm among the 9 realms of Emperor. The person in front of him was completely different. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate in the slightest, as he didn't manage to kill his opponent with a single blow. He once again attacked in a callous manner. That terrifying power made the sun, the moon, and the stars reverse, and the universe collapse. Boom! It was another shocking blow. Boom! 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 The collision between the two occurred thousands of times in an instant. The waves of energy that spread out made the experts from all over the universe tremble with fear. If it were them, they would not even be able to resist a punch and would die. That's all. Although the Emperor's body is powerful, don't forget that I am also an Emperor. Your greatest advantage does not exist in front of me. Yi Shiwen jumped up, and he directly put on the time robe. His combat power instantly soared. Boom! Yi Shiwen and the middle-aged man's fists collided again. Unlike before, they were almost equal. This time, Yi Shiwen directly broke the opponent's finger bones. Golden blood splashed out, and bone fragments flew. The middle-aged man groaned and retreated again and again. His entire palm had been blown away by Yi Shiwen's attack. Yi Shiwen's physical body was already extremely powerful. With the addition of the time robe, his power suddenly jumped a lot. It instantly soared to an unimaginable level. The time robe is not a disgrace in your hands, the middle-aged man said coldly. That's natural. Today is the day you die, Yi Shiwen said coldly. He could feel that the middle-aged man in front of him should have been injured, and he had not recovered yet. That battle should be with the Qin Emperor. Apart from the Qin Emperor, there shouldn't be anyone else. The middle-aged man finally realized how difficult it was to deal with this person who had just become an emperor in front of him. The last battle, I will send you to heaven, Yi Shiwen roared and directly rushed forward. He took advantage of the fact that the middle-aged man had not recovered to directly rush forward. Boom! 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 The fierce battle began again. The middle-aged man was forced to kill by Yi Shiwen. He constantly resisted, but his injuries continued to worsen. He was getting more and more disadvantaged. He was beaten by Yi Shiwen again and could only barely defend. But soon, this balance was broken. Yi Shiwen's punch collapsed his defense, and the momentum did not decrease, and blasted into his chest. Boom! This blow directly pierced a big hole in his chest. For an emperor level expert, such an injury was not considered fatal. However, he was only using a wisp of spirit to control the emperor's body. Yi Shiwen instantly released the Nanmingli fire. For a moment, that wisp of spirit screamed under the burning of the Nanmingli fire, but it could not escape. It was completely imprisoned. With a series of screams, this wisp of spirit was burned to ashes by Yi Shiwen alive. Chapter 2958. As the middle-aged man was annihilated, the Kurfürst Road could not stop Yi Shiwen's conquest. Soon, the ancient formation that had been set up many years ago collapsed, and the 33 heavens inside were also dispersed. They would not be forcibly fused together. Yi Shiwen retrieved his biological parents from it, captured the entire world with great power, and sent it to the depths of the divine court. If Yi Shiwen still had any weaknesses now, it would be his relatives and friends. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he would not allow his relatives to wander outside. The outside world was still immersed in the shock of Yi Shiwen's conquest of the Kurfürst Road. The Kurfürst Road had existed since ancient times. Yi Shiwen was not the first emperor to conquer the Kurfürst Road, but he was the only one to succeed since ancient times. This was completely different. In the eyes of many people, this proved that Yi Shiwen would never be willing to be a peaceful emperor, and he would not turn a blind eye to the existences lurking in the darkness everywhere. Although the emperor-monarchs were supreme existences in the world, there were some extremely powerful existences that could threaten the emperor-monarch. Since ancient times, such things had happened before. Some extremely powerful existences lurked in the heavens and realms. Once they made a move, they could directly challenge the emperor. It was not that ordinary people could deal with them, just like the powerful existence in this Kurfürst Road. If the NID was present, he might not be able to conquer it. At that time, there would be a situation where two heroes existed side by side in the universe. It would also be a great challenge for the prestige of the emperor. Therefore, there were also some emperor who chose to turn a blind eye and only defend their own territory. This was the so-called peaceful emperor. However, Yi Shiwen's actions clearly indicated that he wouldn't be content to be a peaceful son of heaven. He must be a powerful emperor. This would be a powerful suppression for those ambitious people. And it would be a mixed blessing for those who wholeheartedly wanted to live a peaceful life. The more powerful the emperor was, the more powerful the safety of the heavens would be. However, if Yi Shiwen was not willing to be a peaceful emperor, he was bound to conquer everywhere. At that time, it would inevitably cause turmoil in all directions. If Yi Shiwen wanted to deploy troops, how could they not be deployed? However, no matter what they thought, this matter was not up to them. However, those old antiques were shocked by Yi Shiwen's previous words. Someone had used the sovereign's body to stir up the matters of the heavens. This had subverted their understanding. Since he was not within the myriad worlds, how could he truly affect the myriad worlds? He could still use his Dharch body to maintain the combat power of a sovereign emperor. Could it be that the legends about the Kurfürst Road in the ancient legends were true? That person is the one who chose the emperor? Was that person the one who provided the opportunity to become a martial emperor? If that was the case, what was he trying to do? Obviously, such an existence would not be doing good things for no reason. There must be a special reason for it. However, the reason behind this should not be small. Otherwise, the previous generations of imperial emperors wouldn't have found it troublesome and fearful. However, such a problem was not something they could solve or think about, because they had not reached that level. Only Yi Shiwen, as the imperial emperor, could solve this problem. As Yi Shiwen trampled on the Kurfürst Road, his prestige also rose to another level, and he truly established his invincible majesty. Even among the imperial emperors, he was also a strong one, not a weak one. In the world, now, among all the enemies, on the surface, only the netherworld kingdom's Ming-Di could be a match for Yi Shiwen. Perhaps others might choose to temporarily avoid the sharp edge. Everyone's character was different, and not everyone sought absolute control. However, Yi Shiwen seemed to be unwilling to give in and compromise. All those who stood in his way would be trampled by him. Not to mention that Ming Di had made things difficult for Yi Shiwen time and time again, almost causing him to fall short of success at the final step. With such a huge enmity, with Yi Shiwen's character of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, it was absolutely impossible for him to let it go. In the end, the two would have a battle. It was just a matter of when and where. This battle was ultimately unavoidable. This was the consensus of everyone. Under such circumstances, the era of divine court's domination of the world had truly arrived. Under the situation where Ming Di did not come out to confront Yi Shiwen, he was the only supreme ruler in the world, and his words were final. Since ancient times, among the many imperial emperors in the world, there were only a few who had such supreme power. In fact, they could be counted on one's fingers. This was because many emperors throughout the ages had multiple imperial emperors, and it was impossible for them to be invincible and truly invincible in the world. Everyone was in awe of the illustrious reputation of divine court, and everyone was in awe of it. In the next 10,000 years, Yi Shiwen became more and more reclusive, and even the number of times he went out had greatly decreased. Most of the time, he was in the depths of divine court's Emperor Mountain, and he would occasionally come out to preach to the people of divine court. Yi Shiwen was the only two surviving imperial emperors, and his preaching was naturally extremely important to the people of divine court. It was unknown how many people had broken through because of it. Moreover, in these years, divine court continued to expand and develop. It could be said that it had become the current number one imperial emperor's inheritance in the world. In terms of the number of talents, it had firmly surpassed the other imperial emperors' inheritances. This was also the rule of the imperial emperor's inheritance. As long as the imperial emperor was on the throne, the imperial emperor's inheritance would inevitably be at its most glorious and prosperous time. Even though divine court had just been established for less than 10,000 years, it was still a junior among the many imperial emperors' inheritances. However, because of Yi Shiwen's existence, heroes from all over the world came to seek refuge, and more geniuses joined divine court. These geniuses grew up in these 10,000 years, and became the powerful backing and strength of divine court. They seized more resources and developed better. Therefore, more talents were attracted to come, and it formed a benign snowball of development. In this rolling development, the golden era of the heavens and the world became more and more brilliant. Everyone had originally thought that Yi Shiwen's generation would be a golden era because too many peerless heavens pride experts had emerged in this era. Only a handful of people had been as dazzling and brilliant as this era since ancient times. In fact, they could count them on one's fingers. But then they discovered that they were wrong. Although Yi Shiwen's generation was incomparably brilliant, in fact, it was just the beginning of this glorious era. In these 10,000 years, a large number of young geniuses emerged, and each of them was a peerless genius. It could be said that each one was more powerful than the previous one, and they were not inferior to Yi Wudi and the others. All kinds of powerful bloodlines emerged one after another. Many people thought that they had gone extinct in this world, and it was absolutely impossible for them to appear again. However, they appeared in front of everyone again. Some races that were thought to be extinct, such as the Titan and other powerful races that could compete with the dragon race in ancient times, also had their bloodlines reawakened, and walked around the world, regaining their prestige. In addition to these powerful bloodlines, there were also many hidden sects that had not appeared for countless years, but now all had their successors. Moreover, under everyone's eyes, they made rapid progress in a short period of time. There were more than one or two who broke through to the quasi-emperor realm. Compared to Yi Shiwen's speed of progress, they were not the slightest bit slower and even faster. In addition, the most unexpected thing was that even the ancient innate gods had awakened. In the distant past, that group of ancient gods used to rule the heavens and the world. They were the first group of gods in the beginning of the world, and they were born to follow the rules. None of them was born with their own priesthood and godhood, and they were in charge of the affairs of the world. They were different from the demon emperor and other innate gods that were born later. Innate gods like the demon emperor were extremely powerful when they were born, but they didn't have a priesthood, and were just ordinary gods. In terms of power, the ancient gods were even more powerful. It could even be said that those ancient gods were in charge of a part of the functions on behalf of the immature world. Later, these ancient gods also gradually fell in the successive wars. After that, the heavenly race and the three races competed for hegemony and dominated the world. Regarding that group of ancient gods, almost everyone only knew that they existed in legends. Unexpectedly, there were also ancient gods that had been sleeping for countless years, and re-emerged, and entered the Golden Era to compete for the world. Moreover, there was more than one. In such a great era where countless geniuses and evildoers gathered, it simply blinded everyone's eyes. Since ancient times, there had not been so many geniuses and evildoers gathered together. Moreover, after these people were born, their cultivation often progressed very quickly, and they broke the cultivation records that everyone knew. There were even some people who asserted that if Yi Shiwen was born in this era, perhaps his amazing and heaven-defying cultivation record would be nothing. Of course, this was just a wild guess, because there was no such thing as if in this world. Moreover, those who could become emperors in any era were enough to suppress the heroes and dazzle the ages. And in the process, a saying gradually began to spread among the people. Because the confinement period was about to end, the shackles of the rules had been loosened, and this was the fundamental reason why countless geniuses could advance by leaps and bounds in such a short period of time. Without the suppression of the heavenly way, cultivation also became easier, and the Golden Era became more and more brilliant. And there was also an even more shocking news that the confinement period was about to end, and the Golden Era that opened at the end of the confinement period only had one purpose, and that was to become the real emperor. It was not like the semi-finished product of the Kurfürst Road, but the real emperor. Chapter 29:59. This was the world choosing emperors. In the past, the world had always suppressed the number of emperors that could be born. Thus, for a long time, apart from people like Nid who used tricks to become emperors, there were only people like Emperor Qin and Emperor Yi who forcefully tore through the shackles to become emperors. If they weren't very strong, then they were very weak. This was an abnormal situation. And now, the shackles were finally coming to an end. Then, it would usher in an era of many emperors. The young supreme geniuses that appeared now could all become emperors in the future. It was like raising goo. These geniuses were all talented goo worms, but if they wanted to truly transform and become goo kings, they would have to go through fierce battles to stand out from the many competitors. No one knew who would become emperors in the end. Because the super geniuses that could stir up endless waves in front of everyone all had great backgrounds and great encounters. It seemed that anyone could become emperors. There was no one like Yi Shiwen who could suppress the crowd, an invincible figure that illuminated an entire era. Everything was unclear, but the only thing that could be known was that there would be more than one emperor in the world. At that time, it would truly be a situation where heroes would stand side by side. As such, many people had already started to look for candidates to join them. Once these people became martial emperors, they would become true subjects that had contributed greatly to the rise of the dragon. At that time, their positions would truly be below only one person and above tens of thousands. Thus, these young supreme geniuses, without exception, all had a large number of supporters and followers. Even the emperor's inheritances participated in the bet. Befriending the future emperors was also an important reason why these emperors' inheritances could exist for so many years without being destroyed. Of course, they didn't need to bet on one person. They could support several people at the same time. This way, the success rate would be higher. Under such circumstances, the situation that was originally under Yi Shiwen's rule began to gradually become complicated. The clashes between the various young supreme geniuses also began to involve the various powerful forces, and even the emperor's inheritances. In such a chaotic situation, only the divine court could truly sit on the sidelines and not be affected. Because they didn't know whether the others would become emperors or not, but they already had an emperor. No matter how the situation changed in the future, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. That was why it was possible for them to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Yi Shiwen's attitude would become very important in such a collision as the ruler of the world. He could directly kill all of these young Heaven's Pride experts if he wasn't satisfied with the upcoming era of competition. Even if each of them was stronger than the previous one, and each of them had a greater background than the previous one, but if an emperor wanted to kill them, then nothing could protect them. It must be known that the strongest backing amongst them was merely the imperial lord's inheritance. No matter how powerful those imperial lords' inheritances were, they were not as powerful as a true imperial lord. Although the possibility of doing so was not very high, and even the emperor had to consider not to incur the wrath of the heavens and the people, it was still a possibility. After a preliminary probe, they discovered that Yi Shiwen didn't come forward to intervene in their fight. In fact, he didn't even care about anything. This made them feel relieved. They could go all out now. For a time, the entire myriad heavens and myriad worlds were in a mess. Although they didn't dare to have a large-scale collision because of Yi Shiwen's suppression, they wouldn't be as cautious as they were in the beginning in order to grab various resources and fortuitous encounters. In fact, they didn't even dare to cross the line at all. Soon, a piece of news came out. It turned out that Yi Shiwen was in close cultivation, so he didn't care about the fight between everyone. Otherwise, he wouldn't let everyone fight to this point no matter what. And such a fight gradually began to heat up, gradually appearing on the surface. As the major forces and Heaven's Pride experts collided many times and fought several times, it was hard to separate them from each other. For the other creatures in the myriad heavens and myriad worlds, things like becoming an emperor had little to do with them. With their strength, it was unlikely that they would have such an opportunity. For them, this great world was still under Yi Shiwen's rule. As time passed, Yi Shiwen's invincible reputation began to spread further and further. Many people came to visit him. Under the situation where Yi Shiwen was in close cultivation and couldn't meet everyone, they began to walk the path that Yi Shiwen once walked, and expressed their respect for Yi Shiwen in this way. From the earliest true martial domain, to the later desolate antiquity, and then to the Xian world, the places where Yi Shiwen once stood became like places of interest for people to visit. Especially where Yi Shiwen was and what he had done, it became a popular story. Under such circumstances, some of the things that Yi Shiwen had done in the early years that were originally hidden gradually became known. Such things weren't considered as an insult to Yi Shiwen, because they all worshipped him with a pure and innocent heart. In this regard, the divine court still acquiesced to everyone's behavior. As long as they didn't deliberately tarnish Emperor Ye's invincible reputation, even if some of them weren't so positive, it wasn't a big deal. In other words, Yi Shiwen simply acquiesced to this point, and didn't punish these people, which made the divine court tacitly approve of this attitude. In these years, the power of the divine court also became more and more powerful, especially under the leadership of Yi Mo. It became even more prosperous. In particular, Yi Mo's own cultivation was enough to suppress all directions. Yi Shiwen didn't even need to take action, because some of the rascals couldn't even break through his barrier. In addition, the divine court was no longer the same as it was 10,000 years ago. It was no longer the situation where there were only 2 or 3 quasi-emperor level kittens. There were many experts at the quasi-emperor level, and in addition to Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian, there were also a few old antiques who joined the divine court and became the pillars of the divine court. It could be said that the divine court was a huge force. In the face of the beginning of chaos in the heavens, although they also had the confidence to suppress all directions, without Yi Shiwen's permission, they naturally wouldn't come out on their own. There were even many people who privately said that the celestial court's time to reign supreme would probably be in the next few years. In a few more years, when the confinement period was over and the other imperial lords attained the Tao, the celestial court would definitely not be able to reign supreme like this. In the face of these rumors, the divine court had always ignored them, especially since Yi Mo's arrival. Now, the top priority was to consolidate the foundation of the divine court and truly integrate the divine court into one, so that there wouldn't be a situation where the divine court would fall apart without Yi Shiwen. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. As time went on, more and more geniuses appeared and the myriad heavens and worlds became livelier and livelier. Yi Shiwen himself didn't move, and didn't even go out. Everyone knew that he was in closed-door training, but they didn't know that he was sacrificing to forge a Tao tool that truly belonged to him. For an emperor, a Tao tool was almost equivalent to a second life, so naturally, they wouldn't let it go easily. In these years, apart from closed-door training, he constantly went out to find divine materials that could be used to forge Tao tools. Apart from some of the materials he collected before he achieved the Tao, most of them were collected after he achieved the Tao. For this, he went into the primal chaos several times, and went into the depths of the primal chaos to collect matchless divine materials such as chaos immortal gold. Even the ancient emperor couldn't find these divine materials, because he really went deep into the primal chaos for who knows how long. Since ancient times, the primal chaos was extremely dangerous, and only emperor could move freely in it. Only when Yi Shiwen really entered it, he found that the danger inside was even greater than the rumors. In the primal chaos far away from the heavens, even the waves of the primal chaos could annihilate the emperor, and there were even some chaotic creatures that were unimaginably powerful enough to pose a threat to the emperor. Fortunately, these creatures lived in the primal chaos, or the heavens would also be destroyed by these ferocious beasts. Yi Shiwen had entered the primal chaos several times in the past 10,000 years. He had indeed found some good things. Moreover, he had received many divine materials from all the clans in the heavens. The imperial clan, Ji clan, had contributed 10 divine materials in one go to thank Yi Shiwen for returning the Tai Yi sword. Moreover, they were top-notch divine materials. This alone had saved Yi Shiwen countless years of time. One must know that many sovereign emperors had spent hundreds of thousands of years searching for divine materials during this process. This wasn't unheard of. However, Yi Shiwen had relied on various fortuitous encounters to gather all these divine materials in a short period of 10,000 years. Then, he had started to refine his own Tao tool. Yi Shiwen sat under the enlightening mind ancient tree. He had been pondering over what kind of Tao tool to refine for 1,000 years. At this point, time no longer had any meaning to him. Tao tools were very important, and because of this, he had to be very cautious. In the end, he sacrificed to refine a big seal, called the Martial Emperor Seal. And he would be the only martial emperor in the world, and this Martial Emperor Seal would also follow him to conquer the world, and become famous throughout the ages. In the future, it would be famous like the ancestral dragon seal, the time robe, and so on. The materials used for this Martial Emperor Seal were very luxurious, because he had enough divine materials, so Yi Shiwen didn't need to be like some emperors, who used them sparingly and used them as much as they could. And with the passage of time, the Martial Emperor Seal also gradually took shape, and with the formation of the martial emperor seal, it also meant that Yi Shiwen's Tao would also take shape. Sitting under the Mingxin ancient tree, Yi Shiwen's hands were constantly changing hand signs, and in front of him, a big seal was constantly changing shape, and gradually taking shape. Little by little, it changed into the shape of the martial emperor seal in Yi Shiwen's heart. Chapter 2960. The martial emperor's seal gradually took shape. Seconds and minutes passed. It seemed as if 1,000 years or 10,000 years had passed, but Yi Shiwen was not anxious at all. At his level of cultivation, patience was only a basic requirement. Tao principles were integrated into it one by one. This was the most complicated process before the martial emperor's seal took shape. The difference between Tao artifacts and ordinary pseudo-Tao artifacts and divine artifacts was that they were infused with Imperial Lord-level laws, allowing Tao artifacts to unleash Imperial Lord-level combat power. However, it did not mean that the more laws infused, the more powerful they would be. For example, the Time Robe only integrated Time Principle, but its power was enough to let the Time Lord be unrivaled among Emperor Kings. There was also the Phoenix Robe refined by the Phoenix Ancestor. In addition to the feathers he shed as the main material, it also integrated all his understanding of the fire attribute principles in this life. It did not need too many principles, just the fire principle was enough to be unrivaled. There was also the devouring devil pot with the word devil as the foundation, and Tianyuan mirror with the chaos principle as the foundation. They were all different. In the past, Yi Shiwen only thought that Tianyuan mirror was also a demon tool, and should also be related to the demon path. Now he knew that his thinking was too naive. It was precisely because Tianyuan mirror used the chaos principle as the core that it could refine anything and thoroughly practice everything. Chaos itself was the source of everything. From this point of view, the Demon King was indeed an ancient powerhouse. There were also Pill Emperor, Tool Emperor, and others who mostly entered the Tao with one kind of principle, but Yi Shiwen was different. He had too many martial arts and principles, almost like a hodgepodge. According to the normal martial arts theory, this was the most difficult to enter the Tao. Everyone should enter the Tao with pure principles, but Yi Shiwen did the opposite and entered the Tao with mixed principles. Therefore, he could be called a martial emperor. In addition to those emperor-king level secret techniques, he could deduce other martial arts to the extreme with a little deduction, weeding out the old to bring forth the new, unprecedented. In these years, with the mysterious space as the foundation, coupled with his own superb martial arts understanding, he was almost always comprehending martial arts. Since he wanted to become a dazzling martial emperor, then he naturally couldn't be shabby in all aspects. Yi Shiwen might as well go all out. He would gather the 3,000 martial arts, and cultivate each of them to the extreme. Then, he would prove his Tao. Among them, the Sword Tao, Fist Tao, Saber Tao, Thunder Tao, Time Tao, and Space Tao were the 10 strongest Taos that Shaoqin was most proficient in. This was something that Yi Shiwen intended to pass down in the Divine Court in the future. After all, it was the strongest secret of the Divine Court. The immortal emperor's inheritance could be passed down for tens of thousands of generations. Apart from having a deep foundation, the most important thing was that they had a steady stream of cultivation techniques and martial arts that could nurture geniuses. Yi Shiwen had come up with 3,000 martial arts in one go for the same reason. This way, all kinds of people could choose the martial arts to practice according to their own innate talent. This would allow the Divine Court to prosper and have countless geniuses. Of course, the most important thing was that Yi Shiwen had discovered that it would become increasingly difficult to improve the further he cultivated. And the most important thing was that even a sovereign emperor would discover that the road ahead was getting more and more difficult. No matter how much water there was in a small pond, how could it compare to the vastness of the ocean? The bigger the layout, the wider the road in the future. If one's cultivation was insufficient, he could slowly grind it down with time. There would always be a time to improve. But if the layout was insufficient, then the road ahead would become narrower and narrower until it was cut off. However, those who could cultivate to the level of a sovereign emperor were all heroes of the ancient times. How could their layout be small? It was a first-class layout. But when one really reached this step, one would discover that the previous layout might be large, but when one reached the level of a sovereign emperor, it was not enough. It had entered another level. The previous layout had to be replaced and transformed, just like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Yi Shiwen had now opened up 3,000 martial arts and 10 strongest daos in order to transform his own layout. Once completed, even if his cultivation did not improve further, it would not be a problem to kill his previous self. It was just that ordinary sovereign emperors would choose to complete this step slowly. They would not rush to complete this step in the first realm. In fact, many people did not complete this process even when they reached the fourth or fifth realm. These were naturally explained to him by the demon emperor. Otherwise, it was impossible for a newly promoted sovereign emperor like him to know these things. With the guidance of the predecessors, he could indeed avoid a lot of unnecessary detours. At this point, he was creating history with every step he took. He was forging a path that had never been taken before. But he was different. Right now, Ming Di was eyeing him covetously. Not to mention, there was also that terrifying existence whose true identity he did not know. He had to do his best to strengthen his cultivation. Moreover, the sooner he completed the transformation of his layout, the wider and easier his future path would be. That was why he was not in a hurry to break through, but to master the 3,000 martial arts first. Of course, Yi Shiwen was just being vigilant. This involved another matter. That was, Yi Shiwen was the new sovereign emperor. Whether it was Ming Di or that mysterious sovereign emperor, they were all sovereign emperors who were not in power. The difference between being in power and not in power was like the difference between heaven and earth. Although they were all emperor lords, the power that Yi Shiwen could mobilize in the myriad heavens and realms far surpassed them. 1 or 2 power of will of all living beings might not be a big deal for emperor lords. However, the power of will of all living beings was enough to pose a fatal threat to other emperor lords when the power of will of all living beings was added up. In addition, he was the only sovereign emperor in power. In this world, no one could compete with him. The power that he could mobilize was extremely terrifying, just like Emperor Qin in the past. When Emperor Qin had just become an emperor, he dared to fight with that mysterious existence. After that, they clashed many times. The main reason was that he was a sovereign emperor. The heavens and earth were also helping him. He could use the power and control the laws. Therefore, even if a sovereign emperor had just become an emperor, he would still be terrifyingly powerful. Sovereign emperors who were not in power would generally avoid meeting the new sovereign emperor. It was not worth it to fight them head-on. Of course, it was not that there were no examples of sovereign emperors being killed since ancient times. However, that was a minority after all. Most of the sovereign emperors who were killed could not be regarded as sovereign emperors. No matter how powerful a sovereign emperor was, his reign time was limited. Generally, it was limited to tens of millions of years. After this limit, it was regarded as the heavens and earth had tacitly abdicated. Even if he continued to be in power, he would not be blessed by the heavens and earth. There were many things that Yi Shiwen could not understand at first. However, after he knew these things, he also understood why DNI was so vulnerable previously. He was not as powerful as the new sovereign emperor, because he relied on the fortuitous encounter of becoming an emperor to attain Tao, and this fortuitous encounter was probably set up by another powerful figure. He did not become an emperor under the heavenly Tao, so it was naturally impossible for him to have the protection of the heavens and earth, let alone being powerful. If he became an emperor with his own strength, Yi Shiwen was afraid that he would not be able to resist at that time. In the past, there was indeed some element of luck in it. However, things had been forced to that point. If he did not do this, it would not be enough to deter the heavens and earth. Yi Shiwen never regretted doing things, and there was no need to regret. Especially after these years of ruling the heavens and earth, his understanding of the laws of the heavens and earth had become more and more profound. It was really enough to take that step. When he really stepped into the second realm, he would have to settle the score with the Netherworld Emperor. In these years, although Yi Qianqian was still in the divine court, she had gathered a group of remaining masters of the underworld to serve her as the Lord of the Underworld. With the support of an emperor like Yi Shiwen, the remaining masters of the underworld naturally didn't dare to disobey. The most important thing was that Yi Qianqian had indeed obtained the inheritance of the Lord of the Underworld. No matter from which aspect, she was their master. In these years, under the command of Yi Qianqian, they had fought fiercely with the underworld several times in places unknown to others. The spells of the underworld and the underworld came from the same source, and there were many similarities. The most disgusting thing about the underworld was that they could casually turn corpses into soldiers. In this aspect, the underworld was not to be outdone. This was also the reason why the underworld could survive for so many years. At this time, with the support of Yi Shiwen, the speed of development was extremely fast. In the previous war between the Heavenly Clan and the allied forces of the various races, there were countless casualties. Not to mention the allied forces of the various races, even the Heavenly Clan did not know how many people died. No one claimed them back. Now, they had all become the source of the underworld's soldiers. Some powerful figures were even buried underground. After many years, when they came out again, they would become figures of the Lord of the Underworld. At that time, the Underworld would truly be revived. As the new generation leader of the Underworld and the Underworld, Yi Qianqian and the Underworld Lord had fought countless times. Their cultivations were similar, and they knew each other very well. With the relationship between the Underworld and the Underworld, it was impossible that she did not know anything. In addition, both of them had damaged Dao tools to protect themselves. For a time, it was difficult to determine the winner after several fights. It could be said that it was hard to separate them. At this point, it was impossible to determine the winner between them. The final victory would depend on who could become an emperor first. Both of them had the support of the Emperor Lord, and their own strength could be said to be at the top of the world. Every time they fought, the sky would turn dark and the earth would collapse. It was unimaginably powerful. However, no matter how the two fought, Yi Shiwen and the Underworld Emperor did not intervene because there was no need. Moreover, most importantly, they both had the same thought, to use the other's life as a whetstone. Since ancient times, which Emperor Lord did not fight among thousands of troops, there was no one who could cultivate to this realm just by cultivating. Even the NID had to fight for his entire life. No one knew how many strong enemies he had killed before he was selected to seize the opportunity to become an emperor. Those who could succeed did not have luck. Chapter 2961. 3,000 martial arts were flying around Yi Shiwen's body. This was cultivated by him, condensed by him, and was under his command. It was also the foundation of all his martial arts. The martial emperor's seal was also constantly condensed. Time passed, but it seemed that nothing had changed. Yi Shiwen just sat cross-legged and did not move. In front of him, countless great paths were formed and constantly integrated into the martial emperor seal. 100 martial arts. 500 martial arts. 1000 martial arts. 2000 martial arts. 3000 martial arts. All the martial arts were completely integrated into it. Boom! Terrifying airwaves burst in the void, and bright rays of light soared into the sky in an instant. Even the emperor-level array formation that Yi Shiwen had arranged couldn't stop this ray of light from soaring into the sky. The entire heavens and myriad worlds felt this earth-shattering and terrifying power fluctuation. This is the aura of an emperor? Did someone become an emperor again? Many people felt this aura and were instantly dumbfounded. Could it be that another person became a martial emperor? This was simply too shocking. In just a short period of 20,000 years, two emperors had become one after another. Even in the most chaotic years of the war against the heavens, it was rare to have such a high frequency of becoming an emperor. Now, he had become the third imperial emperor. This frequency was simply frighteningly high. Was it really time for emperors to rule the world again? Many people began to feel a little depressed. Without emperors, they were the most powerful people in the world. However, with emperors, their status was not reduced by a little, but immediately became worthless. An emperor could kill a large group of people like them. Not everyone could be compared with Yi Shiwen, who dared to challenge an emperor in the quasi-emperor realm. Ordinary people who did this were basically courting death. Those who dared to do this were already dead. Who could it be? Countless thoughts and names flashed through the minds of the onlookers. There were too many super geniuses, and all of them seemed to have reached the final step. Including the old-timers, it was impossible to count them all. It was possible for anyone to reach the final step, but no one seemed to be showing signs of reaching the final step. No, it's not that someone became an emperor, but a Dao tool. Someone finally realized what was going on. Although this aura was similar to that of a sovereign lord, it was still different. This was the aura of a Dao artifact. Everyone sensed that it was the direction of the celestial court, and they immediately understood. Yi Shiwen should be refining his Dao tool. Calculating the time, he should also be refining his Dao tool. After all, he still didn't have his own Dao tool after he became an emperor. However, this speed is a little too fast. He has only been a martial emperor for about 10,000 years, and he is already refining a Dao tool? Everyone was slightly surprised by the speed at which Yi Shiwen had refined a Dao tool. One must know that many emperor lords had spent hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years to refine their Dao tools as far as they knew. Just finding the divine materials for the Dao artifact would take a very long time, let alone the others. As expected, he is the most unique and powerful sovereign emperor since ancient times. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. However, as this beam of light soared into the sky, another powerful sovereign emperor's might descended upon the world. Ming-Di, it's Ming-Di. Many people were terrified. It seemed like Ming-Di was going to interfere with Yi Shiwen's refining of his own Dao tool. If that happened, it might turn into an unprecedented battle. This was the scariest thing. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted coldly, and his voice spread throughout the universe. A shocking sword aura rushed out and directly broke through Ming-Di's might, restoring the universe to normal. Although he hadn't completely refined the martial emperor's seal, he still had other Dao tools. If they really fought, there was nothing to be afraid of. The two emperors' auras were confronting each other. They were separated by time and space. Everyone was afraid that they would fight. Countless lives and worlds had been destroyed in the last battle between Yi Shiwen and Nid. If they fought again this time, with Yi Shiwen's current strength and Ming-Di's combat power, it would be a disaster for all living beings. It might even be more terrifying. The scope of destruction would be even greater. In the sky, a terrifying calamity was forming. It was heaven's retribution. The martial emperor's seal was the last to be formed. If it wanted to transform into a Dao tool, it would have to go through heaven's retribution. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless thunderbolts swept down and landed on the martial emperor's seal. At the same time, the martial emperor's seal exploded with a shocking light that shot into the sky. It transformed into 3,000 martial techniques that were going to contend with the heavens and earth. His main body went up directly, wanting to use the endless thunderbolts to refine his physical body. This heaven's retribution attracted the attention of the entire universe. Although Yi Shiwen wasn't the one undergoing the heaven's retribution this time, there wasn't much of a difference. His Tao tool was basically related to another life of an emperor lord. Once one failed to overcome the tribulation this time, then it would undoubtedly be an extremely great setback to an imperial monarch. It would absolutely not just be a loss of materials, it would even arouse doubt towards one's own grand Tao. There was nothing more terrifying than this to an imperial monarch. Yi Shiwen sat in the depths of the divine court and didn't move. However, he could feel that Ming Di was watching him closely. It had never given up and would probably make a move at the crucial moment. However, since he dared to choose this time to refine a Tao tool, there was nothing to be afraid of. Time passed by. As the heavens' retribution progressed, the martial emperor's seal became more and more condensed. Baptism by the heavens' retribution was extremely beneficial for the martial emperor's seal after it was formed. The heavens' retribution that everyone else was afraid of was nothing to Yi Shiwen. Among the top 10 martial techniques of his 3,000 martial techniques, there was a Thunder Tao martial technique. The heavens' retribution would instead become nourishment for the martial emperor's seal and help it take shape. Finally, the heavens' retribution gradually came to an end. As the heavens' retribution drew closer, the martial emperor's seal began to gradually display the majesty of a Tao tool. It was becoming more and more tyrannical. Boom! Endless brilliant rays of light bloomed in an instant. In that instant, the entire world was filled with endless pressure. A Tao tool had been formed. It was the supreme among all Tao tools, just like an emperor lord. All the magical items in the world began to tremble and hum as they bowed down. It didn't matter if they had artifact spirits or not, as long as they had the slightest bit of intelligence, they all began to kneel down. They were worshipping the new monarch of the Tao tools in the world. No one was an exception. It was time. Yi Shiwen formed a seal and sent a trace of his spirit into the martial emperor's seal. He was about to complete the final step of the sacrificial refining of the Tao tool. Boom! In that instant, Ming Di finally made his move. A tall figure appeared in the void. However, no one could clearly see what this figure looked like. But everyone knew that this was the only two emperors in the world, Ming Di. He was also the only existence in the world that could contend against Yi Shiwen. Finally, he made his move at this crucial moment. He could not allow Yi Shiwen to refine his Tao tool. That way, Yi Shiwen's strength would increase tremendously. "You're courting death," Yi Shiwen shouted. The Avicii sword in his hand surged forward in an instant. It bloomed with a sword light that was thousands of feet long and directly slashed towards Ming Di's giant hand. Boom! Everything in the world rumbled. It was as if the collision between the two parties had destroyed everything. Time seemed to freeze. In that instant, everything came to a standstill. Then, in an instant, they all blossomed and exploded. The dreadful shock wave directly impacted above the divine court. It was unknown how many matrix arrays were destroyed in an instant. At this critical moment, the Emperor Lord level matrix arrays that Yi Shiwen had arranged suddenly recovered under such pressure and blocked the aftermath of this shock wave. Even so, the disciples of the divine court realm were almost crushed to death. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as they stared at the two men on the battlefield. Yi Shiwen had already rushed into the battlefield. In the sky, the heavenly tribulation had already dispersed. However, the pressure that Yi Shiwen brought with him was much more terrifying than the heavenly tribulation. But at this moment, the moment Yi Shiwen blocked Ming Di's attack, another giant hand reached out and grabbed at the martial emperor's seal. It was trying to snatch the martial emperor's seal away. In that case, Yi Shiwen's Tao tool refinement would fail. "How dare you!" Yi Shiwen reacted almost instantly. His expression was incomparably furious. The time robe on his body burst with brilliant light. The laws of time danced in the sky like ribbons, locking the giant hand in place. Immediately after, Yi Shiwen turned around and slashed down with his sword. This big hand was chopped into endless lingqi on the spot. This was a wisp of divine sense which had condensed endless lingqi. Now, after Yi Shiwen had chopped off the divine sense, it completely transformed into lingqi and dissipated. After this series of dazzling changes, the spirit within the Martial Emperor's seal finally entered the Martial Emperor's seal and completely activated Yi Shiwen's Dao tool. In an instant, bursts of intense light erupted. With a strong deterrent, it suddenly expanded and smashed towards Mingdi. In an instant, it seemed to have transformed into a powerful martial emperor. It was invincible. Boundless martial Dao laws manifested on its body and smashed down. In the sky, Mingdi's figure was instantly smashed and turned into countless phantoms. It was instantly destroyed by the martial emperor's seal. This was only a spiritual energy incarnation. In the end, it was unable to stop Yi Shiwen from refining the martial emperor's seal. Chapter 2962. Mingdi's will manifested in the void and confronted Yi Shiwen. They were evenly matched and didn't want to back down. In the end, Mingdi retreated. With so many people watching from the sidelines, he didn't want to let them take advantage of the situation and become the fisherman. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had just become an emperor. He wasn't confident that he could kill Yi Shiwen while the heaven's will was in his hands. Heaven's will was hard to predict. But in reality, anyone who underestimated the heavens' will would have to pay a painful price. After Mingdi retreated, the mysterious existence also dispersed its will. It no longer spied on this part of the world. Yi Shiwen could sense this. Yi Shiwen confronted the opponent in a strong manner. In the end, he forced the opponent to retreat, and maintained his supreme dignity as an emperor-lord. This also made all the races in the universe heave a sigh of relief. In the end, they didn't fight. Otherwise, half of the universe would be shattered if a chaotic war broke out. A battle between emperors was simply too dangerous. After this battle, Yi Shiwen's power soared. In many people's eyes, the reborn Emperor Yi had finally passed the most dangerous stage of his life. He'd stabilized his foothold at his weakest, and refined his own life Dao tool. This way, his strength had risen to another level. It would be even more difficult for Emperor Hades to cause trouble for him. What happened this time had far-reaching effects. As time passed, it spread throughout the universe. There wasn't a single clan that wasn't horrified and trembling. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly forced back the prying eyes of two emperor-monarch-level existences. His strength was truly terrifying. Many people felt like they were seeing another Qin emperor. Suddenly, it seemed like the Qin emperor from many years ago was also this powerful. He was so powerful that all the races in the myriad of worlds trembled under his might, prostrating themselves before him, being used by him. The human race produced two emperors during the heavenly Tao's confinement period. For a moment their power flourished. After this, Yi Shiwen's title changed from Emperor Yi, because he didn't know what to call himself, to Martial Emperor, the Martial Emperor. Yi Shiwen no longer needed to go into closed-door training after he had finished refining the life-bound Dao tool. Instead, he had more time to spend with his family. Thousands of years passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen's martial power had become increasingly profound during these thousands of years. Many old fogies who had come to visit him had said that the martial emperor had become increasingly powerful. His martial power had become so profound that they couldn't even see the edge of it. Originally, they could more or less look up to him, but now they couldn't even look up to him. He was not far from breaking through. Over the past 1,000 years, aside from the divine court's expansion, the situation in the universe was still restless. The coaches of the various supreme prodigies were still fighting, and there was no clear winner. It seemed like they were waiting for the end of their confinement period to attempt a breakthrough in one go. Therefore, Yi Shiwen should be the only one left before the end of the confinement period. At the end of this millennium, a piece of good news came from the divine court. Yi Shiwen finally had his first direct bloodline descendant. It was a daughter, and the person who gave birth to his daughter was Donli. Unlike Yi Qianshan and Hua Menghan, Donli didn't have great ambitions. After cultivating to the stage of Tao validation, her improvement in cultivation was relatively limited even with Yi Shiwen's guidance. She was ultimately an ordinary person. She didn't have great ambitions, nor did she have great talent. After more than 10,000 years, even with Yi Shiwen's guidance, she had barely cultivated to the great perfection of the Tao validation realm. However, she had done something that the other two women had failed to do. She had given birth to Yi Shiwen's first child. The daughter's mother was a god, and her father was the most powerful emperor in the world. She was extraordinary the moment she was born. Strange phenomena descended from the sky, and golden light filled the sky. The auspicious signs of the four spirits of heaven and earth faintly appeared. The azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise appeared together. It was a rare emperor bloodline and was extremely impressive. Many people guessed that with such a powerful father, the princess's future achievements would be limitless. She wouldn't be inferior to the current supreme prodigies, and she might even be better. Soon, news came from the divine court that Yi Shiwen had personally named his daughter, Yi Qingyue. Her nickname was Little Crescent Moon. Little Crescent Moon had yet to appear in front of everyone, but various speculations regarding her physique were already flying around. In particular, some people swore that Little Crescent Moon had inherited Yi Shiwen's gilded tyrant form, and could crush the primordial sacred mountain the moment she was born. Some people said that wasn't the case. Combined with the various phenomena, they guessed various super physiques that had once appeared in the world. But in any case, everyone didn't doubt Little Crescent Moon's future achievements. As the daughter of an emperor and the little princess of the divine court, there were very few people who could compare with her in terms of status since ancient times. Moreover, she was the daughter of Yi Shiwen after he had become an emperor. So, she was completely different from the ordinary emperor's bloodline before he had become an emperor. Many people even asserted that whoever could marry Little Crescent Moon would be able to save 100,000 years of hard work in the future. However, all sorts of speculations slowly subsided with the divine court's internal ban. It was really enough for gossip to spread for so many years. If not for the fact that the owner of the gossip was Yi Shiwen, who would be willing to continue gossiping. Furthermore, Little Crescent Moon had yet to mature. It was too early to discuss such matters. In a primordial sacred mountain deep in the divine court, Yi Shiwen, Yi Mo, Yi Qianshan, Hua Menghan, Donli, Yi Wudi, Young Kunpeng, and company sat in a circle on the grass. Now that Yi Shiwen had become an emperor, there were not many who dared to sit on equal footing with him. Amidst the chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers, a baby's babbling voice was mixed in. It appeared especially special, and the baby's voice naturally came from Little Crescent Moon in Dawn's arms. Although several years had passed, Little Crescent Moon's growth was very slow. She was still like a baby. With regards to this, Yi Shiwen was in no hurry. This was because he knew very well that the more powerful a living being was, the longer their childhood growth period would be. For example, an ordinary dragon's childhood could be more than 1,000 years old. As for Little Crescent Moon she had a god-mother and an Empyrean king-father. She was born different from mortals. She was born with the bloodline of a god, so the limit of a mortal's lifespan did not exist for her. It was only a matter of time before she could cultivate to the realm of Tao confirmation. The reason why Dawn wanted to hug the little fellow was because her grandparents on both sides treasured the little fellow. Even as a mother, it was rare for her to have a chance to hug her. The little fellow had just been born, but her seniority was already frighteningly high. Both Yi Shiwen's family clans could be said to be flourishing. After so many years, his seniority was already immeasurably high. Therefore, little Crescent Moon was already a figure on the level of a great-grandmother the moment she was born. As for how many generations of great-grandchildren she had, it was probably unknown. Come to think of it, it's been many years since we've gathered. It's been about 10,000 years. Yi Shiwen said slowly. It's been about 10,000 years. Now it feels like 10,000 years. 10,000 years feels like a year. Yi Wudi said. Yi Shiwen, Yi Mo, and the rest were still in the divine court, so it was not difficult to meet them. Only he and young Kuan Pung were on the side of the ancient heavenly courts, so it was difficult for them to meet. Although it was not difficult for them to meet each other given their cultivation levels, everyone had their own matters to attend to. It was not easy for them to gather together. Yi Shiwen also felt a lot of emotions. Back then, it was said that a day was like a year, a day was like a year. Who knew that there would come a day that it was not a day that felt like a year, but a year that felt like a day? Year after year passed just like that, and he felt nothing. Time had come to a standstill for them. In a blink of an eye, the kid from back then is now a father, Yi Mo said with a sigh. He still vaguely remembered the first time he met Yi Shiwen. He was ruthless and a little inexperienced. Now, all that was left was steadiness and majesty. Who knew that he would have such a day in the past? Yi Shiwen could not help but look at Yi Qianqian and Hua Menghan awkwardly. Although the two of them were immersed in cultivation, Yi Shiwen and them still had no children. He could not absolve himself from the blame. However, the two of them snorted coldly and turned their faces away, completely ignoring the awkward Yi Shiwen. On the other hand, Dawn could not help but secretly laugh when she saw Yi Shiwen in such an awkward state. It was said that he was the ruler of the world and an emperor who suppressed everything. Who knew that such a figure would have such an awkward time? She felt a deep sweetness in her heart. Regardless of what others said, he was her husband and the father of her daughter. Don't talk about me. I have a home to return to. What about you? Yi Shiwen looked at Yi Wudi, who was gloating, and immediately felt a little angry that he was the one to blame. Why are you talking about me out of nowhere? I'm living a carefree life. Yi Wudi immediately said unhappily. Hee big brother, let me tell you. Second brother isn't as carefree as he makes himself out to be. He has long taken a fancy to a fairy. Now, he's secretly becoming an itinerant cultivator to pursue her. Young Kuan Pung immediately exposed Yi Wudi's past. Yi Wudi immediately chased young Kuan Pung around the mountain in anger. Instantly there was chaos. Yi Shiwen did not know whether to laugh or cry. One of them was the master of the heavenly courts, while the other was a demon master of the heavenly courts. They were important figures who wielded great power in the world. Yet they were so carefree. If word got out, they would be laughed at. However, it was extremely rare for people of their status to have such a carefree side. While everyone was present, Yi Shiwen made an announcement. He was going into seclusion again. Furthermore, the duration of his seclusion was unknown. His goal was to rush into the second realm of the ninth realm emperor. Chapter 2963. Yi Shiwen had just attained the Tao, and he was already at the first realm. However, he was not in a hurry to break through to the second realm. He still had the patience. He waited for more than 10,000 years, until his 3,000 martial arts were perfected, and his life Tao tool was completed. Only then did he finally go into closed-door cultivation. Of course, although he said that he was going into closed-door cultivation immediately, it was not that fast. He did not know how long this closed-door cultivation would last. Yi Shiwen still had a lot of things to prepare. In particular, Ming Di and that mysterious existence might make a move. He must be prepared and prepared. The martial emperor's expression that he was going into closed-door cultivation soon spread. This time, it was unknown how many years this closed-door cultivation would last. Many powerhouses breathed a sigh of relief. With such a powerful emperor above their heads, it was like a sharp sword that made them feel suffocated at any time. Now that Yi Shiwen was going into closed-door cultivation, it was the best opportunity for many ambitious people. Especially now that they needed to determine the winner so that they could take the lead on the road to becoming an emperor in the future. As for competing with Yi Shiwen, it was no longer necessary. His speed of attaining the Tao was too fast. After Divine Court announced that the martial emperor was going into closed-door cultivation for a period of time, the myriad heavens and realms seemed calm on the surface. However, there were already undercurrents surging underneath. Many people were ready to make a move. Except for Divine Court, which was unafraid of the wind and rain because of the presence of an emperor, there were no changes. The other major forces were planning to take advantage of this period of time when Yi Shiwen was not around to do something. After confirming that Yi Shiwen was going into closed-door cultivation, the entire myriad heavens and realms fell into a situation of constant small conflicts. In particular, the clashes between the peerless geniuses almost changed the color of the world. In the end, Divine Court's people with Tao tools appeared to calm down several battles to prevent countless worlds from shattering. Since Divine Court was the current ruler of the myriad heavens and realms, they naturally had responsibilities in this regard. However, such battles were just the beginning. Moreover, the Golden Era had just begun, and it was not the end. Therefore, there were more geniuses growing rapidly. After tens of thousands of years of nurturing, Divine Court also began to produce their own geniuses. It was not like before, where all the famous geniuses of Divine Court came from outside, and the natives who were nurtured had not yet matured. In these tens of thousands of years, many geniuses also appeared one after another, catching up. However, in the eyes of the crowd, it was only a matter of time before the Celestial Court caught up. After all, with the support of such a peerless celestial emperor, everything was only a matter of time. Another 1,000 years passed during the era of no emperor. It disappeared without a trace like a white steed flitting across a crevice. The clashes between the various parties continued to be intense. In fact, even the Netherworld Kingdom was getting restless. They were constantly mobilizing their troops, especially on the major battlefield. Their soldiers would appear everywhere, as though they were plundering the corpses of the dead. Everyone knew exactly what their intentions were. But more often than not, the Netherworld Kingdom would react to the news, and an even more intense battle would erupt. The Underworld and the Netherworld Kingdom were two shadowy organizations that had been keeping a low profile since ancient times. But now, their activities were already semi-public. At the same time, the crowd was also shocked by the strength of the two major organizations. Experts that were hard to come by in other forces were like cabbages in the Netherworld Kingdom and the Underworld. Even though the crowd knew the training methods of the two major organizations, they were still extremely shocked. This was a unique way to achieve the Tao. Some people had also become emperors because of this. Therefore, it couldn't be said that this way was wrong. In fact, everyone who became emperors had their own unique Tao. This was also necessary. And just when everyone thought that all this would continue, a terrifying aura suddenly came from the Celestial Court, suppressing the world. Many people quickly reacted. Who else could have such cultivation and strength in the Celestial Court besides Yi Shiwen? The martial emperor had come out of his closed-door training, and it seemed that his aura was much stronger than it was 1,000 years ago. Obviously, he had made some achievements in his closed-door training. Everyone understood that the gap of 1,000 years had finally passed. The following days would not be so good. Almost immediately, all parties tacitly stopped fighting. Immediately, news came from the celestial court that the martial emperor had come out of his closed-door training. Just when everyone didn't even have time to catch their breath, a decree was sent from the celestial court. The martial emperor requested all the major forces to deploy their troops to accompany him on a punitive expedition against the netherworld kingdom that had been coveting the heavens and the realms. He wanted to destroy the netherworld kingdom in one fell swoop. In an instant, thousands of layers of waves were stirred. Are the two emperors finally going to meet? Many people exclaimed in shock and fear. Yi Shiwen and Ming Di were already prepared for this. They were bound to fight sooner or later given the enmity between them. However, he hadn't expected that this day would come so soon. The martial emperor had only ascended the throne for 10,000 years. Was he going to attack a veteran emperor like Ming Di? No matter how much confidence they had in Yi Shiwen, they didn't think that Yi Shiwen's chances of winning against a famous emperor like Ming Di were high. This is going to be a shocking battle. If Ming Di dies, the netherworld kingdom will definitely fall apart. But if Yi Shiwen dies, I'm afraid the newly established celestial court will also be wiped out. Ming Di had attacked the martial emperor several times. In the eyes of others, even if the martial emperor had to swallow his anger because of his cultivation, he couldn't continue to do so. But this speed was still beyond their imagination. But who in the world would dare to disobey the decree of the martial emperor? Otherwise, the first person to be punished would be this disobedient subject. Although the other party was an emperor-emperor's inheritance and had an emperor-emperor overseeing it, everyone still didn't think that he was a good person. During the war between the allied forces and the celestial race, the netherworld kingdom didn't stand on their side. On the contrary, they were waiting for the right price and even showed signs of turning to the celestial race's side. All of this made many loyal people unhappy. But there was nothing they could do. After all, Ming Di was an emperor-emperor. He wasn't someone they could afford to provoke. But now that Yi Shiwen had personally taken action, the netherworld kingdom would perish and Ming Di would die. The martial sect, the Ji family, the Fire Cloud Cave, the 8 royal demon clans, the celestial court, the ancient Phoenix realm, the Dragon Island, and many other famous emperor-emperors' inheritances responded to Yi Shiwen's call. Under the leadership of these emperor-emperors' inheritances, the regal sects didn't dare to do nothing. They dispatched their elites and gathered at the celestial court. His decree had caused the entire world to follow suit. Some people had rushed over to respond to Yi Shiwen's decree. However, some people had been forced to mobilize their troops with great difficulty. But in any case, it didn't affect the speed of the celestial court's mobilization. Under Yi Shiwen's decree, no one dared to disobey. For a time, the army gathered. It was grand and mighty, stretching across countless worlds. It was a shocking sight, and it was impossible for the netherworld kingdom to not notice such a big movement from the celestial court. All kinds of armies were also being mobilized. The entire netherworld kingdom was very clear that if they didn't stop the allied forces this time, they would most likely face a dead end. The netherworld kingdom's strength was indeed powerful. It was even above the ordinary emperor-emperor's inheritances. But could it be compared to the heavens? This was the difference between an emperor-emperor and an emperor-emperor. An emperor-emperor who was in power had to shoulder the task of protecting the world. But at the same time, he could also mobilize the resources and power of the heavens. It wasn't something an emperor-emperor who wasn't in power could compare with. This battle was likely to completely destroy the netherworld kingdom. There was no chance of a fluke. All kinds of corpses that had been buried for countless years couldn't wait for the best time to be unearthed. They were forcibly awakened to increase their combat power in order to fight against the heavens. The armies of both sides were preparing in an orderly manner. Everyone knew that this was a battle of life and death. And the key to this battle of life and death was who would win between Yi Shiwen and the Netherworld Emperor. Other battles of life and death couldn't really decide the outcome of the battle. The army gathered in the celestial court. Under Yi Shiwen's command, they marched majestically towards the Netherworld Kingdom. And the person sitting on the throne in the middle of the army was none other than Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who had just come out of closed-door cultivation, looked full of energy. His strength was unfathomable and unimaginable. He was much stronger than when he was in closed-door cultivation thousands of years ago, because he had truly stepped into the second realm. After spending more than 10,000 years, he had finally taken this step. The difference between the first realm and the second realm was another extreme. It was a world of difference. It was completely unimaginable without truly stepping into this realm. Now that Yi Shiwen thought about it, he realized how powerful and terrifying a person who could reach the ninth realm of the Emperor Lord was. It was as if he could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. It was precisely because he had stepped into the second realm of the Emperor Lord that he had absolute confidence in conquering the Netherworld Kingdom and completely eradicating this great threat. It wasn't just because of the personal grudge between Yi Shiwen and the Netherworld Emperor. It was also for the heavens and the heavens. The Netherworld Emperor was different from the Lord of Hell. The Lord of Hell wanted to establish reincarnation and let everyone live in peace. But the Netherworld Emperor wanted to place death above all living beings and shroud the heavens and 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 the heavens were shrouded in the dark clouds of death. This ideology terrified all living beings. This was also the reason why so many people fought to be the first to join the conquering army. Especially those gods who had proven their Tao. It wasn't easy for them to jump out of the three realms and out of the five elements. Even the heavens couldn't take them in, but someone actually wanted to take them in on behalf of the heavens and let them die. Such people were the mortal enemies of all living beings. You can live with the sins of the heavens, but you can't live with the sins you bring upon yourself. Netherworld Emperor, are you really prepared? Yi Shiwen muttered to himself. The conquering army entered the depths of the endless void. The territory of the Netherworld Kingdom that no one had ever reached before was filled with the aura of death. This was the homeland of the dead, a paradise for the dead, and a place where all living beings could not enter. Chapter 2964. The Netherworld Kingdom had never been invaded by the army of the living. Even if they fought with the army of the Underworld Kingdom, the Underworld Kingdom had an endless army of the dead. It wasn't that there were no emperors who had designs on the Netherworld Kingdom in the past, but they were often stopped outside the Netherworld Kingdom's territory. In the past, it was only one emperor who had designs on the Netherworld Kingdom. However, there were many emperors at that time, and no emperor could mobilize such a huge force. However, Yi Shiwen could do it. He was the only emperor in power. No one in the heavens dared to disobey him. Moreover, he had just driven away the heavenly clan. He had made a monstrous contribution. It could be said that no one in the heavens could compare with his prestige. The power that he could mobilize from the celestial world was not something that others could compare to. Everyone understood that if the Netherworld Emperor was defeated this time, it was only a matter of time before the Netherworld Kingdom became history. Under the siege of the celestial world, the Netherworld Kingdom could not survive. The army's momentum was majestic. The moment they entered the Netherworld Kingdom's territory, the war had already begun. This was a war of annihilation. There was no room for compromise between the two sides. Especially for the Netherworld Kingdom, many people had a biological sense of pain. They felt that the Netherworld Kingdom was toying with the dead. No one wanted to be ordered around by these people after they died. Rumble! All kinds of explosions broke out on the Netherworld Kingdom's territory in an instant. The terrifying war machines were all activated in an instant, carrying out carpet bombing. Even though the Netherworld Kingdom's territory was not small, it could not withstand such bombardment. For a moment, all kinds of defense lines were collapsing. Yi Shiwen, who was sitting in the center of the army, slowly opened his eyes. At the same time, a cold and deep roar came from the depths of the Netherworld Kingdom. You finally came? Yes, I'm here. Yi Shiwen flew up and flew above the entire Netherworld Kingdom's territory in one fell swoop. Above the Netherworld Kingdom, the death energy was even more intense, so much so that it was hard to imagine how many years it had been accumulating. Even the laws of the Netherworld Kingdom had been modified, and the rules of heaven and earth had changed. The law of death was dominant, and it rejected other laws. To be able to suppress the enemies who entered the Nether Kingdom, it would already be quite good if they could use 70% to 80% of their strength. It was unclear how many powerhouses were buried in the territory of the Dark Kingdom. In fact, Yi Shiwen could feel the divine senses of many powerhouses flying across the sky. If it had been in the past, then perhaps he wouldn't have been able to deal with them even if he had gone all out. However, the situation was completely different now. He alone was enough to suppress everything in all directions. The demon monarch has also come before. He wanted to rule over the world of the living and the dead, but in the end, he still failed. That ice-cold voice sounded. It was a loud shout that made the world shake violently. But it's enough, isn't it? It was precisely because of the battle between the Demon King and the Lord of the Underworld that you were able to launch a sneak attack on the Lord of the Underworld and finally gain control of the world of the dead, wasn't it? You should thank him. Yi Shiwen indifferently said. The crowd was in an uproar. They didn't expect such an expression to have happened in the distant past, and it involved 3 monarchs. This made them despise Mingdi even more. Even though he was a powerful monarch, he didn't deserve any sympathy for doing such a thing. You faced a severely injured Lord of the Dead, and in the end, you were seriously injured and fell into a deep sleep until now. No matter how you look at it, you are a loser. A mere loser wants to strut around in front of me? What a joke. Yi Shiwen continued to expose Mingdi's past. It was obvious that he wanted to destroy Mingdi's will without a fight. How dare you? You've only become an emperor for 10,000 years, and you're already so arrogant. You're treating other emperor lords as nothing. What will happen if you continue to grow? An emperor lord like you who grew up in an era without an emperor is really too arrogant. Do you really think that you're invincible and can sweep the world? Mingdi's shout was incomparably cold. I'm not ignoring others, I'm just ignoring you. I don't know how much strength you have left after being severely injured by the Underworld Lord's great Tao. Yi Shiwen was fluttering in the sky. His black hair was fluttering in the wind, and his clothes were fluttering with a dang-dang sound. Today, I'm going to destroy your Netherworld Kingdom and rid the world of this great scourge, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Ever since he learned of the Netherworld Kingdom's philosophy, killing intent had sprouted in his heart. The balance of yin and yang in the world, the balance of life and death, was the supreme principle. Whether it was Ming-Di or the Underworld Lord, they all discovered this and found another way to establish the Netherworld Kingdom and Underworld. They were both considered to have the will of the heavens, and finally had the chance to become an emperor. But he actually had the wildest idea to bring all living beings into death. This way, he, the ruler of the endless world of the dead, was equivalent to the heavenly Tao, seeking to transcend. He wanted all living beings to die for his own selfish interests. This idea was simply too crazy. This was different from the Underworld Lord. The Underworld Lord wanted to maintain the balance of heaven and earth with his own strength and created the 6 paths of reincarnation. This was to promote the balance of yin and yang, life and death. Once he succeeded, the merits would be limitless. Therefore, he could tolerate the underworld but not the Netherworld Kingdom. Otherwise, even if Yi Qianqian had obtained the inheritance of the underworld, it would not change his mind to destroy the underworld. "Don't you dare!" Emperor Ming roared. "Why wouldn't I dare? Ming Di, get out here!" Yi Shiwen shouted. The chrono robe on his body began to emit intense rays of light, distorting time and taking over the Netherworld Kingdom's time. It was as if he had isolated a whole new world. Now, he was leading the army of the heavens to attack the Netherworld Kingdom. He wanted to completely eliminate this great threat and get rid of him. Yi Shiwen suddenly stomped his feet, and suddenly, the entire world shook violently. Not long ago, who dared to do this in the Netherworld Kingdom? Not even since ancient times. Seeing my true form, no one can survive. Everyone will fall into death. Yi Shiwen heard an ice-cold voice. He saw an unknown creature slowly walking over from the horizon. It seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. It appeared in front of Yi Shiwen in an instant. It was a creature that looked like an ancient mountain. Its entire body was wrapped in endless death energy. One could only see its huge body and hundreds of arms waving in the sky. Its eyes were blood-red like lanterns. But soon, everyone realized that within the endless chaos energy, there were some places that were faintly discernible. Blood flowed everywhere, and it was still flowing out. White bones could be seen, as if it had suffered serious injuries. But what was even more shocking was that with the physical body of an Emperor Lord, there was no injury that couldn't be healed. But Mingdi's body was full of all kinds of injuries, as if some kind of force was frantically preventing him from recovering. Dao injuries, these must be Dao injuries. The person who could leave Dao injuries on him must be the legendary Underworld Lord. Someone exclaimed. At this moment, everyone finally understood how terrifying a battle between Emperor Lords was. Such Dao injuries had lasted since ancient times and hadn't recovered. It wasn't easy to determine life and death in a battle between Emperor Lords. But once it did, it was life or death. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and looked at the real body of Emperor Ming. This creature wasn't a powerful creature that he knew of. However, according to the records of the underworld, although there wasn't a clear explanation, the underworld guessed that Emperor Ming was most likely the only nether beast in the world. It was a sentient life form that was born from the nether laws of the world. It was born with great magical powers. Later on, it defied the heavens and became an emperor, achieving hegemony. According to the records of Underworld, although Ming Di had launched a sneak attack on the Underworld Lord, there was clearly a huge gap in strength. Although it succeeded in the end, it was beaten to the brink of death and almost died. At that time, not a single piece of flesh could be found on its body. That was why it buried itself in the deepest part of the Netherworld Kingdom to recover. It was just that the Underworld Lord had burned his life in a fit of rage back then. The injuries were no small matter, and even now, there was no way to heal them. Even so, the aura that Ming Di was emitting was still terrifying. Countless years ago, Ming Di was already an expert among the Emperor Lords. When he joined forces with the Underworld Lord, even the Emperor Lords of the world of the living, who wanted to plot against the world of the dead, were repelled by the two of them. However, just as Yi Shiwen had guessed, Ming Di's injuries were recovering at an accelerated rate. The more it recovered, the faster it would recover. At this rate, it might not even take 10,000 years for it to recover to its original state. At that time, it would be hard to say who would be the victor. Because of this, Yi Shiwen had to act. Otherwise, if Ming Di recovered to its peak, it would still be very powerful even if it wasn't in power. Ming Di, you don't need to struggle. Even if you struggle, it's useless. Yi Shiwen said coldly. Humph, what a joke. Ming Di sneered. Then, its huge body gradually transformed into a middle-aged man in an imperial robe. His eyes were like torches as he looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. It's time to flatten the Netherworld Kingdom. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. The radiance of the time robe on his body became even more dazzling. Even the laws of the Netherworld Kingdom couldn't affect him because he and Ming Di were on the same level. Therefore, the laws that Ming Di had set up were naturally ineffective against him. However, it was still extremely pressuring for ordinary people. They could only use 70 to 80% of their strength. This was a huge drop in combat power. Chapter 2965. This was also the reason why the Netherworld Kingdom was able to resist the covetous eyes of many. If one wanted to deal with the Netherworld Kingdom while their combat power was declining, they would have to pay a huge price. In addition, the Netherworld Kingdom was much stronger than the average Emperor's inheritance. Unless one was like Yi Shiwen and mobilized all the realms to attack the Netherworld Kingdom, the chances of success were too low. Ordinary people could not stand the extreme laws of the Netherworld Kingdom. It was precisely because of these laws that the Netherworld Kingdom was able to nurture so many powerhouses. They could not be resurrected just by burying them. Yi Shiwen, you have guts. Since ancient times there have not been many who have such gut. However, they will all have to pay the price. Ming Di looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. His eyes were red like two scarlet gems. Humph, you are just a smelly rat hiding in the dark. How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? Yi Shiwen's words almost made Ming Di jump in anger. Yi Shiwen's words never left the topic of his sneak attack on the Lord of Underworld. For an Emperor-level expert like him, this was a humiliation. After all, he was an expert of that level and yet, he still dared to do such a thing. It would be understandable if he was an enemy, but the Lord of Underworld and Ming Di had always been working together against the enemy. In the end, he stabbed his ally in the back. Such a person was not worthy of respect, even if he was an emperor. Yi Shiwen just stood there and looked at Ming Di. He had such confidence. It had been more than 10,000 years and many things had changed. He was no longer the same as when he had just become an emperor and needed to take care of everything. Back then, you were lucky enough to become an emperor. Instead of being a peaceful emperor, you actually dared to come and attack the Netherworld Kingdom. Today you will pay the price. Ming Di's hair danced in the wind as he said this. His aura was ice cold and he was insufferably arrogant. His eyes were so cold that it seemed as if they could freeze the entire universe. A huge halberd appeared in Ming Di's hand. He brandished it, and the faint roar of a dead beast could be heard. It didn't sound like the roar of a living creature, but rather the roar of a dead creature. The first time Yi Shiwen heard such a roar was on the Demon Island, and it made his hair stand on end. Of course, he didn't need to do that with his current cultivation. Yi Shiwen just stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He took a step forward and stepped on a golden rainbow bridge that was millions of miles long. It went straight into the endless sky. The battle between the two could easily affect the troops of both sides below. At this point, there was no need for that. Ming Di was clearly of the same mind as Yi Shiwen. He held the halberd in his hand, and followed Yi Shiwen directly into the endless sky. This was the extreme edge of the entire world. It was very far from the ground. Moreover, there was the barrier of the underworld. It was enough for the two of them to fight to their heart's content. A battle between Empyreans. Everyone was trembling when they saw this scene. They couldn't help but feel cold all over. Even though they had experienced this more than once, they were still worried and afraid. On the contrary, it was precisely because they had experienced it more than once that they knew how terrifying an expert of this level could be. He was simply not on the same level as their professors. Buzz! In an instant, Ming Di made the first move. He rushed forward and attacked Yi Shiwen with his halberd. There was a black dragon pattern engraved on the halberd, and it seemed to come alive at this moment as it pounced towards Yi Shiwen. This was a dragon of death. No one knew which golden dragon had been killed and refined into this halberd. Its power was simply unimaginable. Clang! The time robe appeared on Yi Shiwen's body and instantly enveloped him. layers of 5-colored divine radiance burst forth to resist the attack of the halberd. The dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws, but it was as if it had encountered a porcupine. It had nowhere to bite and had no way to break through Yi Shiwen's defenses. This was an attack that could annihilate a group of quasi-emperors. Ming Di attacked with all his might because he knew what kind of existence this person before him was. He couldn't underestimate him. This was the second time that Yi Shiwen had fought against Ming Di. However, he had only used a wisp of his primordial spirit previously. It was a completely different concept compared to Ming Di himself. Yi Shiwen let out a long howl and punched forward. 6 paths of reincarnation. Yi Shiwen's punch suppressed the heavens and earth, forming an incomparably huge 6 paths of reincarnation that pressed down in all directions. Yi Shiwen's attack was unleashed with the dark Bodhi divine hand, and its power was multiplied by several times. It was terrifyingly powerful. At this stage, both of them had already raised their battle prowess to the extreme. There was nothing to hold back, or rather, they didn't dare to hold back. Both of them had their own weaknesses and strengths, and they were well aware of that. To Yi Shiwen, his strength was naturally his undamaged great Tao. It was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people, and was at its peak. Coupled with his many Tao treasures, his strength could be multiplied by several times. However, his greatest weakness was his cultivation. He was only at the 2nd stage of the 9th stage Emperor-Monarch realm. As for Ming Di, he realized that Ming Di was at least a 4th stage Emperor-Monarch. In a normal fight, even with Yi Shiwen's various enhancements, he probably wouldn't be able to defeat Ming Di. Fortunately, Ming Di was severely injured, so he still had a chance. Yi Shiwen's punch was enough to subdue the heavens and earth, as well as all the nomological laws. However, Ming Di's reaction was even faster, and he immediately turned around and countered. Dang! After an intense collision, the void began to collapse and tremble. Ming Di's netherworld kingdom seemed to be on the verge of collapse. More blood flowed out of Ming Di's body. This attack was also a form of injury to him. Even if they were evenly matched, his injuries were his greatest weakness. However, he had never admitted defeat in his life. It was unknown how many sovereign emperors he had seen at the same time. At that time, he had no scruples and dared to go against those sovereign emperors. Now, he was even more unbridled. In an instant, he attacked again. Although his vitality was somewhat lacking compared to Yi Shiwen's, his skills were more profound, and his understanding of the great Tao was even more astonishing. It was precisely because his vitality was inferior that he needed to focus his energy and resolve the problem as soon as possible. Yi Shiwen retreated a few steps. He felt the blood in his chest churning. This was the first time he had been shaken in a fight with an Emperor Realm expert. One must know that even when he had killed NID hadn't been able to pose a real threat to him. Ming Di lived up to his reputation as the ruler of the Netherworld Kingdom to be able to do this. However, Yi Shiwen quickly recovered his cultivation. After undergoing nirvana, the Phoenix regeneration technique became even more miraculous. This small injury was almost completely healed in a matter of minutes. Seeing that Ming Di was charging towards him again, Yi Shiwen rushed forward and roared, "Ming Di, it's time for you to die. Since you're already injured, why don't you die?" "Humph." Ming Di didn't reply. He simply swung the halberd in his hand towards Yi Shiwen. He knew that Yi Shiwen was trying to shake his Tao heart. However, his Tao heart was already as hard as steel, and wouldn't be shaken by such words. Sovereign slash! Ming Di roared, and the halberd in his hand suddenly emitted an unimaginably intense light. The halberd light swept across the sky, piercing through the protection of Yi Shiwen's chronorobe. The chronorobe is indeed powerful, but you can't unleash the full power of the chronorobe because you aren't the Lord of Time. Ming Di's attack continued to penetrate deeper, almost piercing through Yi Shiwen's entire body. This was a terrifying and majestic power. Even an emperor monarch was no exception. The halberd pierced into Yi Shiwen's body inch by inch. Just as it was about to pierce through Yi Shiwen, suddenly, a long sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. A sword aura that was millions of miles long formed out of thin air, and the sword slashed towards Ming Di. Bang! Yi Shiwen's attack directly struck Ming Di. Ming Di didn't have a peerless battle robe like the chrono robe. The armor on his body was instantly smashed into pieces. The full power of the Avicii sword was still very shocking. It had reached an unimaginable level. Again, Yi Shiwen raised his sword high again, and then suddenly slashed down like lightning. The speed was also extremely fast, and a shocking sword aura pierced through the sky. This sword forced Ming Di to defend himself with his halberd. He wasn't like Yi Shiwen, who had the protection of the chrono robe. Although he couldn't unleash 100% of its power, just a portion of it was enough. It was unimaginably tyrannical and powerful. He had to defend himself. This was also his greatest weakness. Bang! The halberd and the sword aura collided fiercely, and the heavens and earth split apart. Yi Shiwen, don't think that you're the only one with a Dao treasure, Ming Di said coldly. He flipped his palms and waved towards the void. A gray stream of light pierced through the sky, instantly transforming into a battle robe that flew over his body. Underworld sacred robe? Yi Qianqian, who was standing at the front of the army, suddenly exclaimed. She immediately recognized the origin of this underworld sacred robe. This was the life Dao treasure of the Lord of Underworld. It was just that after the Lord of Underworld fell, the underworld sacred robe had disappeared and never appeared again. Hence, it had never been passed down to her. Who would have thought that it would end up in the hands of Ming Di now? No wonder she couldn't find the whereabouts of this underworld sacred robe, no matter how hard she searched. With the enhancement of the underworld sacred robe, Ming Di's battle prowess had increased by a huge margin. Compared to before, it had undergone an earth-shattering change. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.